Whether you're joining a Product Marketing Alliance event for the first time, or if you're a seasoned regular, welcome to Product Marketing Trailblazers. We have an awesome selection of innovative content lined up for you this week. But before we dive in, I just want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, speakers, and you, our lovely audience, for joining us. From wherever in the world you are watching, we're sure you'll enjoy today's talks. To get the most out of these sessions, please ensure you're sharing your feedback and asking your questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. Each of the recordings from today's sessions will be added to our on-demand library. If you aren't already, then why not become a PMA Pro member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, and our entire library of video content from all our events. So with all that to come, let's dive right in. Hello everybody and welcome back to Product Marketing Trailblazers. We've got another fantastic session for you lined up now. I am chatting to the wonderful Georgia Watson, who delivers sales enablement programs and transforming skills for IBM across Europe, the Middle East and Africa. And we're going to be chatting about sales enablement and specifically the relationship with product marketing and how you can make this a true success in your company. So very warm welcome, Georgia. Thank you very much for joining us. It would be awesome if you could start us off with a bit more of a thorough introduction to your background, your experience, and perhaps your journey to your current role.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me, Rose. Great to be part of the event and great to talk to your wonderful PMA community. It's also been a way for me to reconnect with my marketing roots as well. So I've worked in the tech industry always, and my background is in marketing. I started in Australia and then working across Middle East and Africa. So including field marketing, channel marketing, product marketing, as well as brand and advertising. I then spent some time doing consulting around talent and transformation. And one of the things I really loved in my final marketing role, which was focused on brand and advertising, was the learning and employee engagement piece that came with that. You know, I know your audience knows, Rose, that all employees are really brand ambassadors. And so there was a big focus on that in the role. And following that role, I took a bit of a turn in my career and focused more around the skills development, skills transformation and learning. And so moved into a series of roles around enablement. And I'm now very focused on sales enablement with IBM across Europe, Middle East and Africa.
Fantastic. Very exciting career path, definitely. So to get us started and to get everybody on the same page, I guess, how would you define what sales enablement is?
This is always a great question because, you know, sales enablement looks different to every organization. And even sometimes within the one organization, it can look different. You know, IBM is big and we have a really established sales enablement function. And in different parts of the business, even it is quite different. But I think what is kind of consistent is what it is all about. And that is about to help businesses drive predictable revenue and elevate the level of client conversations. So it can also include things like, you know, creating that outstanding customer experience and helping clients achieve their goals, whether it's, you know, transformation or their innovation agenda. And it involves different things as well. So at IBM, it includes everything from training to experiential learning, coaching, tools, optimizing processes, and more we're seeing enablement roles being more tightly tied with culture as well. And I know I was reading the sales enablement landscape report, the volume 2 that came out recently. And in that it actually said that it was over 33% of marketers mentioned that they don't actually have sales enablement teams in place. And that 64% of PMs actually own that function. So I suspect we probably have some people who really know about sales enablement tuning in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to see how it's evolving in different companies, like you said, and whether that sits within product marketing, is its own beast, or doesn't exist. And you're right, there's a huge amount of opportunities across the business for it. So really important to get a solid strategy in place. And kind of thinking about that, obviously, there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to successful sales enablement strategy. Specifically thinking about cross business collaboration. And I guess with a view to kind of how product marketing and sales enablement are working together, have you seen anything working really well when it comes to collaborative working, or what's your experience been in that space?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to share kind of 3 points around this and then a bit of a how. So it's so important that we collaborate. The first thing is basically when you think about marketing, any kind of marketing, not just product marketing, and sales enablement, sales, we have the same goal. We want to drive revenue. We want to create quality customer experiences. So it makes sense for collaboration. Our goals are so tightly aligned. We have to be talking the same language, of course. And this is across, all different areas of the business. But where we do see marketing and product marketing and sales enablement really partnering well, we see better outcomes. So the second thing I wanted to raise is that customer experience is counting for more than ever. Now, B2B buyers, which is the space I'm working in, they have higher expectations than consumers now when it comes to their buying experience. So Gartner actually did some research looking around buyer expectations. And for B2B buyers, 85% of them actually felt that the experience of the purchase was more important than the product. And this was 79% for consumers. So this is a huge shift. So our products now matter less than our experience. So as product marketing and enablers, we need to make sure that we are really getting everything spot on across every touch point that the clients or customers are interacting with. So we have to get that right. And it's not just sales. Sometimes when we think about sales enablement, we can be quite narrow, but it's everybody who's involved in the process. The third thing I wanted to raise is this need to be totally customer focused. We all talk about being client-centric, but how well we do it is sometimes a bit variable. And I say this, it's just critical because I don't know about you, Rose, but I don't like being sold to. Nobody really likes being sold to. As soon as we get a call on a phone and we figure out it's somebody telemarketing something to us, we get off that phone as quickly as we can. This is kind of the same for many of our buyers as well. But at the same time, I can recall many times that I have loved the actual buying experience. So we need to shift from this focus on selling and pushing to serving. And this is something where our sellers are so important. And as product managers and sales enablers, we need to help them make that transition. Now, how do we go about this? What's the starting point? I think it all begins with understanding what the real needs are and then delivering of something of value to address those. For that to happen, you have to have open lines of communications all around, right? With clients, with sellers across the business. When it becomes when you need to execute this on a larger scale, we need to really be more deliberate about partnerships, interlocks, and how we're gathering that feedback. So they're my tips, Rose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of things there. First of all, that B2B purchasing customer experience stat is quite mind-blowing,
right?
But totally understandable. And yeah, having those kind of aligned goals across the business is so important, and even more so in kind of a space like this, where you're, directly facing the customer, have that real opportunity to engage with the customer day in, day out, and use those learnings. So kind of thinking about all the positive theory behind it and making it a bit more real world. Are there examples of, specific collateral or any tools you might recommend that really enhance this relationship between product marketing and sales enablement?
Yeah, I think in terms of collateral that's being created, there are some that have just been around forever and aren't going away. Things like customer case studies. When I started as a new grad in marketing, part of my job was to create this engine that churned out customer case studies. And now, 17 years later, they are still as important as ever. And I saw in the sales enablement landscape report, the people who responded there also saw that it was one of the top most valuable resources to be created. It was that, sales one pages, and then I think product demos were also in the top three. So I think they're consistently adding value for those who are using them. Other things that we find really, I get a lot of positive response in IBM are things like sales playbooks. So, and having customizable sales ready assets. Our sellers, they can't go out with generic pieces anymore to their clients. They have to be able to customize everything. So I think it's really important to consider that when you're thinking about the collateral that you want. And I don't think there's a list of, collateral that works in every context and every organization. It really comes back to this, the point on what's needed and what is going to deliver the most value. So you really need to understand, what does that look like? What is going to resonate with your customers? What is actually going to help sellers? And you need to understand, these to deliver something of value. So understand your customers, understand your industry, understand their pain points. And for sellers, we need to understand what their needs are. And of course, this is something that we can do quite easily if we want to. It can be as easy as asking. There is never a time where I have asked for a seller or a sales leader for input on something I'm creating, a sales enablement program normally, but I assume it will be the same for collateral if someone's creating it, where they haven't wanted to share their input and their perspective. So really encourage you to reach out, and ask. When you're kind of scaling, right, and you want to get more than just, a few people's feedback, you need to make sure that you're putting things in place to kind of get cadence, regular feedback to evolve what it is you're creating, to make sure it continues to reflect what's really going on in the market, your competitors, and what your clients need. Things can change really quickly, and you need to be ready to adapt the assets. The same ones you were doing 2 years ago may not work now, and they're probably not going to work in 6 months' time as well. So when you do think about getting that feedback on a larger scale, you really need to look at your metrics, and you need tools to help you do that. Look at the metrics to understand what's being used, what's adding value, what people are saying. This can be as simple as putting on options for people to comment or rate the collateral that you're creating. Then you can get feedback from a really large number of people really easily and quickly. So I'll say, think about your tools that you can use also to help give you those insights. So you're really creating content that's valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many kind of valuable little points there that, as soon as you make a document, it's a living document. It should be revised constantly. The market's constantly changing, your competitors are changing, and you need to be kind of positioned to reflect that. So yeah, very crucial. And definitely I hear it time and time again, quality over quantity. Everyone's already drowning in information. So really understanding what does bring value is a huge win. And I guess kind of in your experience, is there an example you can think of where a product marketing team have really brought that value to a sales enablement team?
I think it's so the recent, IBM sales play kits that were released. So these were sales enablement led, but of course, a lot of input from product marketing and offering management. The way IBM is structured may not be the same in your organization. But these kits were really practical. They included a number of different content types that were ready to be adapted, adjusted, and then taken out directly to clients. And as well in the kits were all the cheat sheets and one pages, and also little micro content videos to help sellers figure out how to really pitch, these offerings effectively. So they were really well received, and the way that it was done has kind of set a new benchmark for the way that we are doing it internally in IBM, and we'll continue to kind of evolve those as well, right? They're continually being updated as we get feedback and situations change.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like an awesome win. And I love that kind of setting your own benchmark, and it really sets a standard across the business to replicate that.
Yeah. And there's also examples, where it hasn't gone well, right? When I think about back in my marketing days, the way that we used to approach how we're enabling, the digital sales teams who are following up on our marketing activities, I kind of look back in horror now and think, gosh, why did we do it like that? What were we thinking? There was a time I was leading our geo expansion marketing for IBM. And there were a lot of marketing campaigns going out, big events, digital, all different kinds of things. These are the days when you could do events. Yeah. And we had digital teams that were following up on all the leads and potential opportunities that came out. And I remember for one of them, we were doing these big launches, and I set up a 1-hour call. I cringe thinking about it. I set up a 1-hour call with our digital team who are going to be acting on these leads, and I briefed them on the campaign, what it was about, who the audience was, what was happening, what they would see. And then we had an SME come in and just gave, like a few comments at the end, and that was it. And I thought, what chance have we really given these guys to effectively follow up on these potential opportunities? And these are digital sellers who were working cross-brand, right? So they weren't specialists in the one area. So we weren't really setting ourselves up for success. So I think it's so important that we take that enablement piece seriously. So whether it is partnering with your sales enablement team and partnering with them on time so that together you can plan something that is just what you need, delivered at the right time, or if it's you who are doing the sales enablement as well, make sure you treat it as a priority. It's no good if you're creating this amazing collateral and all these marketing campaigns are happening if the team who are following up on those leads don't have the skills to convert it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Perfect. We've got about kind of 6 or 7 minutes left, so I want to dive into a couple of other questions. So talking about innovation, why is innovation a business imperative, and what does it have to do with sales enablement and product marketing?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite topics, as you know, and there's a quote that Justin Trudeau gave and he said, the pace of change has never been this fast and it will never be this slow again. So much is changing in our world, right? Disruptive technology, new business models, and we're basically revolutionizing the way that we work, the way that we buy, the way that we sell, the skills we need. And everything is changing really quickly, and it's not going to slow down. So how do businesses keep up? How do sales enablers keep up? What about product marketers? We need to keep evolving also. We need to think differently, and we also need to innovate. So here's why I say it's a business imperative when you've heard me talk about this, is because according to McKinsey, organizations that invest in innovation make more revenue. So in past crises where companies have invested during the actual crisis, they've had superior growth by 10% during the crisis and outperformed their competitors by 30% after the crisis. So this is huge. And we all know the story of companies like Blockbuster, Kodak, Polaroid. It's kind of a thing of survival. If your competitors are innovating and doing better and you don't, well, it's not good news for you. So I think it is so important for us, also as enablers and product managers, because if you work in B2B, most of your clients are probably facing this also. Mm-hmm. They also need to innovate if they want to remain in touch, profitable, and thriving as organizations. So saying let's innovate sounds really simple, right? But of course, it's a big, complicated thing with many different factors and many different elements that can help it thrive or not in an organization. Mm-hmm. But I think there are small things that we can all do within our organizations, and maybe it's not your whole organization. Maybe it's your immediate team. Maybe it's your stakeholders. But we can all influence the culture and how it is. So the scale on which you do that is entirely up to you. And of course, it's much harder if you're battling uphill against a culture that doesn't really support innovation. And the kind of key inhibitor there is where there is a reluctance to try new things, or that, failure is seen as potentially career limiting rather than something that you can learn from. The other piece is around, I guess, your products. You have to keep changing the products. You have to keep changing your messaging, your marketing. And I would even say the way that you're enabling your sellers to sell them as well. We have to keep pace with the way our world is moving. And if we think about sellers and even clients, our attention spans are getting shorter than ever. We live in a world of TikTok and we make snap judgments so quickly about what we're going to invest our time in or not. So we have to make sure that we are continually looking for new approaches and better way to do things that can get more impact. So I'll challenge everybody tuning in to think about how you can challenge the status quo and look for a better way to do something that you are doing day in and day out. And it doesn't have to be huge. This can be taking something you do in another part of the business and applying it differently, or in a new way. But there are always ways that we can optimize and improve on what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more that innovation is a culture and a shared mindset across the company. And sometimes you need to force yourself to get off that treadmill so you can see things differently or prioritize a different area and things like that. And that's actually where innovation and creative solutions happen. And you're right, can't be afraid to fail. We've all been there, we all will again.
And we've all learned from it, right?
Exactly.
If nobody's willing to take that risk, nothing changes and nothing improves. So we need to be ready to do that.
Exactly, all get left behind, like you said. And yet, just kind of coming full circle, we've talked a little bit about different collateral and tools and things like that, but I'd love to know what sales enablement assets you have really found most effective. And also on the flip side, something I always see in our community is product marketers tearing their hair out about how to get sales teams to use these assets. So I'd love to kind of wrap up with a bit of, your wisdom in that space.
Yeah, look, it's not only product marketers who have this challenge, let me tell you. This is a consistent challenge and it kind of comes back to value. If you are just pushing so much content and materials on your sellers, they will just switch off. They are busy, their attention is finite, and they're very focused on what they need to do. So the kind of flip side of this, if you are providing something that helps them, something that makes their job easier, something that can help them progress or win that opportunity, you will have their attention. Now, the challenge is sometimes letting them know that that is actually what you have. You have this piece of gold value here and they don't know. There's a number of different ways that we've approached this, at IBM and specifically in the work that I've done for Middle East and Africa. And one of the campaigns that was really successful and got our highest use of the associated collateral that I have ever seen in my experience in sales enablement was a quiz kind of focus campaign that we did at the start of the pandemic. And we called it Thunder in the Cloud. It was focused on our cloud technologies. And this came at a time where everyone was really struggling to adapt to this new way of working. And we had new sales plays and we had to enable our sellers to make sure that they could get out into the market and try and sell those. And this was at a time, people had added about 5 hours screen time to their day. People were really struggling. So we thought, how are we going to get them to look at this? So we came up with this really light seeming way of approaching it. So we did these series of live interactive quiz shows. Now, quizzes are nothing new. We made this fully interactive and we had 2 teams competing. And of course, the great thing about sellers is they're so naturally competitive. So we played off that and had prizes and we had 2 teams competing. And before each session, we shared details around what the topic for the next quiz was going to be. And if you want to read up, here are some resources. And so we had the highest click-throughs and the highest rates I've ever seen of people actually going and consuming this content because they wanted to make sure they got the answers right so that their team could win. So I think a couple of learnings. So make sure what you're creating is adding value, but it needs to be packaged in a way that is consumable. So I often talk about what I call accordion content. So, we all want something that is easy to engage with. We want something that seems light. It has to be fun. we have to deliver learning in ways that equal what people are getting in terms of entertainment and engagement outside of their learning in their personal lives. So it has to have this quite engaging, fun top layer. And that's what we did through the quiz. And then, of course, underneath, you then need to have the supporting information that people can then expand on. So hence why I say accordion. So it's kind of small at one point, but then it expands out really underneath so people can dig into the details. So that's one way that we've done it, Rose.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. It's kind of like everyone can gain something from the surface level, but those who really want to strive and compete to be the best can dive deeper, and the information is all in one place. So it's not kind of, any extra hurdles to access it. That's such a genius analogy. I'll be using that. Also, I love that kind of the social aspect of that, like you said, everyone's screen time had increased. Nobody knew what was going on. Suddenly this huge amount of isolation, and kind of having that socialization as well. It's such an important part of kind of working in a team and feeling like you're working towards the same goal. Sometimes you really do need it, laid out there in front of you.
Yeah, and we too quickly forget, right? Our sellers and our teams who we're enabling and who we want to use our materials, they're people too. They're human. They want to be entertained. They want to be helped to achieve what they need to in their job. So I think particularly, now since the pandemic, we really can't ignore that human side and the bigger picture of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been an awesome chat, but I have a couple of quick fire questions to round it off. After all the great advice you've already delivered today, I guess what's one core piece of advice that you'd love to leave our audience with?
So I would say that attention spans are limited. So you really need to prioritize and focus on what you are creating and ensure that it delivers the most value. So if you can get that right, I think that's the key.
Yeah, definitely. Always kind of forefront of your mind, whether it's like new content, new website, copy, or whatever it might be. It's like across the board. Attention spans are through the floor. And I guess if people wanted to connect with you further, Georgia, if they had questions or anything like that, how's the best way to do so?
Please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Georgia Watson. Give me a search. I should pop up. Very happy to connect and answer any questions that you have on LinkedIn, or you can pop them here in the chat and I'll respond to them as soon as we're done here. Well, I'll do my best to anyway.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being so generous with your time and thoughts. This was a really insightful session, and I know the kind of sales enablement struggle is real within our community. So hopefully it's helped shed some light on that. So yeah, thanks for joining us again, Georgia. And please do stay tuned, everybody, as we will be right back with another session.
working from home. Time to make some progress on this blog post. What's this? Account executives, do you have healthcare case studies? No, of course not. Proof points about how we're different, better than competitors? What's wrong with the sales team? ROI stats for the website. Man, positive reviews on G2. This is ridiculous. Wait a second. I forgot we have user evidence. Hey team, it's all here. We're good.
Welcome back to Product Marketing Trailblazers. We're about to join another awesome talk, but just before we do, I want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, speakers, and you, our wonderful audience, for making this event possible. With expert presentations and specialist talks on the agenda, you are in for a real treat today. Please ensure you're sharing your feedback and asking all questions in the comments section of the video, as our speakers will be answering them throughout the day. After the event, a great place to continue the discussion is in the PMA Slack community. So if you aren't already a member, hop on over and join the conversation. And if that's still not enough, then why not become a PMA Pro member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, our entire library of event content, and much, much more. So with all that to come, let's dive right in.
Hi everyone, excited to be speaking here today. My name is Yaroslav, I'm a product marketer, and what I'm going to be talking about is a playbook on how to build a sustainable growth strategy and execute on it. So a quick introduction, like I said, I'm Yaroslav, I'm a product marketing manager at a company called MacPo. I'm working on a product that is called SetApp, which is a productivity service that works as a subscription-based app store. I'm not going to be talking about my product today. What I'm going to be talking about is how to build and execute, how to build a growth strategy and actually execute on it. This is what people usually picture when they think of growth: money, progress, success, revenue. But growth is not about any of these actually. Growth is about the process you have to build and execute, not money nor success. It's all about the process. And the good news is that there is a framework you can apply to build a sustainable growth. Products and markets can be unique, but achieving growth is not unique at all. It's about the process that you have to build and apply to your business, to your products, to your teams. And it doesn't matter whether you're building a B2B or a B2C product or a marketplace. It's the process you have to follow and build and implement it. So like I said, there is a kind of a playbook that I will be sharing today, and it's based on my experience and my team's experience and the products I'm working on. And this playbook consists of 3 key items. Find and measure the product market fit, build and scale functional growth teams, and scale via testing and experiments. And I'll be touching each of those 3 items. And the first one is find and measure product market fit. And getting to the product market fit is the only thing that matters. And it's not possible to build a company if you have not found your product market fit. But what is it, and how do you know you have reached product market fit? It's a simple question that is not difficult to answer. And there is a clear explanation on how to measure product market fit. And the truth is that product market fit is absolutely clear and measurable entity, and it's not different for every company? Well, like I said, products and markets can be unique, absolutely, but process of measuring product market fit is not unique at all. Let's dive in. So product, market, what's in between? And if we say that product is interpreted as a combination of value proposition, features, and user experience, and market is defined as users and their needs, which is hard to argue with, the fit between them lies in achieving the following. It is clear who the target customer is, and you bring those right customers in. It is clear which specific customers' needs your product is to serve. Your value proposition gets traction. Your product does have the right features to serve the needs of the target customers, and the customers can easily understand how to do what they want to do when interacting with your product. And if these 5 statements are true, if you can kind of check mark those as true statements, it means that you are in the right market with a product that can serve this market. So the fit is, or the fit equals, statement 1 is true, plus statement 2 is true, plus statement 3 is true, plus statement 4 is true, and plus statement 5 is true. It's kind of like a formula of those statements are true. And it is important to understand that those are not 5 ordered steps, since it's almost impossible to argue with equal importance of each of them. If we remove at least one of the product or market-related variables out of this formula, the fit between the product and market might not happen. The question is what to measure. And although this formula is very logical and really difficult to question, it only shows what is true when the product market fit is already found. And it doesn't help you understand which metrics have to be measured to monitor whether product market fit is actually happening. And you can constantly experiment with your value proposition, validate hypothesis, trying to understand which features are important and which are not. You can proudly announce the winners of multiple A/B tests and debate on the criteria of the next MVP, but not measuring the impact on activation, engagement, retention, and customer loyalty leads to building a product just for sake of building it. While the ultimate of any company should be build the product a lot of customers want. So to answer the question on which to measure, the quick answer to the question is have a customer on the radar. Okay, now it's becoming clear, I hope. So to understand when product market fit happens, you have to know how healthy your activation, engagement, retention, and customer loyalty indicators are. So 4 key areas for measuring product health are the following. Activation, are new users becoming active users? Engagement, how engaged are your active users? Retention, are you giving your users enough reasons to come back? And the last but not the least, are your users happy enough to become your promoters? So what is most important? Is it activation, loyalty, engagement, retention? What should you focus on first? And the truth is that building a product a lot of customers want is not a single variable problem. So you have to pay attention to all of them. How? Well, again, focus on a customer. Have a customer on the radar. A customer whose life you are trying to improve and who actually hires your product to do the job. So product market fit radar. That's kind of like a framework that makes product market fit measurable and tangible, and thus easier to manage and discuss with your team. And as you can see, the product market fit radar has 4 dimensions that collectively That's the keyword that collectively indicate whether the company found its product market fit. With activation, you check whether new users have experienced the value of your product. With engagement, you measure the level of users' commitment to your product and find out whether they find value in your product. With retention, you can understand whether you're giving your users enough reasons to come back. And with loyalty dimension on the radar, you know whether you have enough loyal and enthusiastic customers who recommend your product to other potential buyers. So having these 4 on the radar is a good way to measure the health of your product. And let's dive in. Activation. So activation is a moment when a new user takes specific action to get value out of a product. In Instagram's case, for example, that specific action might be posting certain number of photos or following certain number of people on other accounts. And for other types of products, activation could be defined as signing up, making first transaction or first purchase, viewing 3 videos within a specified period of time, etc., etc., etc. An activation metric answers the question, what percentage of new users have experienced the value of your product? Percentage of new users who have experienced your product's value equals the number of specific actions divided by the number of new users. For example, let's say 100 completed first purchases divided by 1,000 new users would mean the 10% of new users who got the value of the e-commerce product X, okay? Now, how to identify the activation metric? It is your job to define what should be a key milestone in driving long-term product usage. Like what is the number one use and most important user experience they should be getting in the product? And do not try to guess, okay? A good way to start is to analyze the user behavior to find out what returns users consistently to do in your product. What is that thing? Now, a logical question, what is a positive activation rate indicator? You can start with 30% as a benchmark for activation rate, and then check whether it has the right number for you. But the negative would, let's say, can be less than 10%. The neutral would be about 30%, and the positive, anything exceeding 30%. But again, you can start with this benchmark and then see what it looks like for your product. The second dimension on the radar is engagement, okay? So engagement rate helps you measure the level of users' commitment to your product and find out whether they find the real value in your product. And engagement rate answers the question, how engaged are your active users? And to measure the depth of engagement per user, you have to divide the number of key actions completed by users, for example, transactions or songs listened to or movies watched or reports created, et cetera, divided by active users count. For example, weekly active users or monthly active users. For example, if we have 10 million songs listened to by users divided by 100 million users, monthly active users, that would mean a 10% engagement rate for the music streaming service. And again, what is a positive engagement rate indicator? It depends. And again, you can start with something with a benchmark of, let's say, 50% for, and then set the goals for improvement. Like negative can be below 20, neutral 50, and positive exceeding 50%. Now, the third dimension of the radar is retention. Retention rate is the metric that helps you understand whether you are giving your users enough reasons to come back over time and whether you are bringing the right users in. Retention rate answers the questions, how many of your active users return to the product over time? And to measure your product's retention, you have to use a retention curve. Let's say this is a retention curve for product A, and we are analyzing users who started using product A for the first time on, let's say, January 1st through January 31st. And this graph shows weighted average of nth day retention for numbers from cohorts of users acquired within that period of time. And according to the retention curve, for example, day 5, as you can see, retention is 50%. And this means that out of all users who first used the product on January 1st, which was day 0, 50% came back and were active on January 6th, which is day 5. And it looks like a huge drop-off, but we can see that the curve stabilizes on day 15. And we can say that product A has product market fit for this particular cohort. And yes, retention can indicate whether your product has a product market fit problem. For example, product B's retention trends to 0 pretty fast, which means that it does not give its users enough reasons, enough value to return and to take those key actions within the product. And product B has not found the product market fit. And it is important to mention that before building similar graph to measure your product's retention, make sure that you have defined clearly 2 things: key actions, like actions that you want your users to do every time they come back to your product, and usage interval, frequency, like daily, weekly, monthly, etc., with which you expect people to use your product. Okay, and the 4th dimension on the product market fit radar is not to check whether your customers have established a habit around your product or whether you give them enough reasons to come to your product over time. This one is aimed to measure how loyal your customers are. And measuring customers' loyalty helps you know whether you have enough loyal and, let's say, enthusiastic customers who would recommend or who do recommend your product to other potential buyers. And what is important, why is it important to measure customer loyalty? Mainly because loyal customers are the ones who are likely to look around, who are less likely to look around for an alternative solution. And B, they are more likely to recommend your product to other users and become your growth engine. Now, how to measure customer loyalty? The truth is that there are multiple ways to measure customer loyalty, and some companies associated with dollar or revenue-related metrics like customer lifetime value or repurchasing levels and multiple product purchases. Others prefer to measure customer loyalty index, which comes from customer surveys. But when thinking of customer loyalty and trying to understand whether you've built the product a lot of customers want, in our opinion, Net Promoter Score is one of the best ways and one of the best metrics to apply. So NPS is measured with a just single question survey and reported with a number from -100 to 100. And this question is, how likely is that you would recommend product X to a friend or colleague? And respondents give rating between 0, not at all likely, and 10, which is extremely likely. And depending on their responses, they fall into 3 categories. Promoters, those who put 9 and 10, loyal, enthusiastic customers who recommend your product to other potential buyers. Passives, who put 7 and 8, those are satisfied customers, but not happy enough to be considered as promoters. And detractors, those who put from 0 to 6. Those are unhappy customers who are, or not happy enough, who are unlikely to repurchase your product and can even damage your product's reputation with negative word of mouth. And to determine the NPS, you have to subtract the percentage of detractors from the percentage of promoters, and the NPS can range from -100 to 100. Now, what is the positive NPS? Again, there are a bunch of benchmarks that you can find on the web, and it varies basically by industry. But for the software or applications, for example, 30 is an average score. You can compare NPS against other companies to set your goals, but the main goal is to constantly experiment and build the experience that creates promoters. So build a product a lot of customers want. So a lot said about the product market fit radar. The product market fit is happening when all of these four statements are true. Okay, users have experienced the value of your product, which means activation is happening. Users find the value in your product, which means engagement is happening. Users are given enough reasons to come back, and they do come back to the product over time, which means the retention is in place. And users are loyal and enthusiastic and are willing to recommend your product to other potential buyers. Achieving product market fit means you've built a lot of customers want, and a lot cannot be true when at least one of these four is false. All of them have to be true, and then it would mean that you build a product a lot of customers want. So the product market fit formula is activation, like product market fit equals activation plus engagement plus retention and plus loyalty. So actually four dimensions on the product market fit radar. And this radar approach, when you have a customer on the radar and you're measuring these four, makes it possible to measure the product market fit, and thus easier to manage it and to discuss it within your teams. Now, why these four? Why activation, engagement, retention, and loyalty? Well, none of them is a vanity metric. All of them are about a customer. All of them are about the value of your product, and all of them are actionable, okay? And all of them are measurable. So that was about the first step on the playbook on how to build sustainable growth strategies, how to define and how to measure the product market fit, how to understand that you are achieving it. Second point in this deck today is build and scale functional growth teams. Okay, so what is a growth team? A quick answer is it's a self-contained team that owns and drives business metrics through testing practices. And you do have to have these teams if you want to grow. So in the growth team structure would have the following. So the following roles of the growth teams would be needed to build this team. Product manager, that's a leader who sets the culture and direction of this team. Then you need marketing expertise, marketers who are experts in at least one channel, and they are T-shaped specialists who are deeply experienced in at least one channel and understand how all the marketing function works. Design expertise, so you don't need to have perfectionists in growth teams. You have to have a designer who can mock up quickly and experiment a lot quickly. Engineers, experiment-driven, passionate about growth, again, not necessarily perfectionists. And data analysts. Without these guys, it's really difficult to make conclusions and understand how you're doing. So they help design the tests and extract the insights out of the experience really fast. So that was the second thing on a playbook on how to build sustainable growth strategies, to build a growth team that would consist of marketing, design, engineering, and analytics expertise, and with a PM being a leader of the team. And the third thing on the third point of this, the third step on this playbook is scale via testing and experiment. So you have a growth team now. They have to help you scale the business via testing and experiments. And here there are 5 steps that you have to follow. It's discovery, prioritization, design and execution, measurement and learning, and getting insights. And those are like logically ordered 5 steps. You discover what you're going to be testing, or like on a high level, what you are validating. And then you prioritize all the ideas that you have for the tests. And there are a bunch of, we're not going to dive deep in it, but there are a bunch of, again, frameworks and playbooks on how to prioritize what to test, which feature and functionality to test. And then design and execution. This is when your growth team actually executes the actual experiments. And then measurement, when your data analysts measure the results. And then extract learning stage, like what are you learning out of those tests, and extracting insights to implement in the product or to run another test, okay? So let's summarize it a little bit. So building a lot of customers want, or which translates into building a sustainable growth strategy, can be done on this playbook. Find and measure the product market fit, build and scale functional growth teams, and scale via testing and experiments. So those are 3 things. And product market fit, it's all about the radar, and with activation, engagement, retention, loyalty dimensions on this radar. Building and scale functional growth teams, it's about having not classic marketing teams, but a team of different mixed expertises from marketing, product, engineering, data analysis, and design. And scaling via testing experiments, where you discover, prioritize, run actual tests, measure the results, and then make decisions and get insights for the product development, product roadmap, or for the next tests. That was it. 3 items. I hope it's useful. I hope you guys come back to your offices, to your products, and implement what I was sharing today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Hi everyone, we hope you're enjoying Product Marketing Trailblazers so far. Just before we jump into the next session, I want to share some info on a very exciting project we have been working on here at PMA. As you know, here at PMA, we are dedicated to elevating the role of product marketing. But as the function grows, we have been focusing on how to develop the best product marketing leaders for now and the near future. So, if you're harboring hopes of becoming a product marketing C-suiter, this is for you. Equip yourself with essential knowledge and skills with PMA's fellowship program, our 8-week interactive course taking place from January 17th. Built alongside director and VP level PMMs from distinguished brands such as Amazon Web Services, LinkedIn, and Uber, the program is packed with over 40 hours of education that'll help you learn, share, and enhance your credentials. Join experienced leaders from the likes of Shopify, Gong, and Airslate as they share indispensable knowledge on the topics needed to flourish in a leadership role. From scaling teams, data, budgets, to strategies, project management, and influence. Gain unprecedented access to tried and tested tactics, strategies, and methodologies that'll help you build an exemplary strategy. Plus, an exclusive fellowship alumni, 14 templates and frameworks, live weekly workshops, and actionable coursework. Enroll today at pmmalliance.co/fellowship and take the first step towards becoming a C-suiter of tomorrow. But for now, we're headed on back over to Product Marketing Trailblazers.
Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining me here today. My name is Sean Lauer, and I'm the head of product marketing at Mural. I'm very excited to be here today to speak to you about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, because I've been living it for the past 2 years. Building a product marketing team at a hyper-growth startup. On the surface, this topic may sound simple or even mundane, but I can assure you that it was anything but that, as Mural has experienced unprecedented growth over the past 18 plus months. But we will get to that later. First, let me give you a taste of what we're going to talk about here today. And before I get started, let me just set a quick timer here for 20 minutes, just to make sure I don't run over time. Great. First, I want to give you a little bit of my background and experience so that I might help add color to how I've thought about tackling the challenges around hypergrowth. So we're going to start here with just a little bit about me. Next, I will set the stage by making sure we're all on the same page about Mural, what the product is, who we work with, etc. Then we'll jump into the challenge of hypergrowth and paint a clear picture of the gaps that needed to be filled in order to support a hypergrowth organization. And then lastly, we'll move beyond the challenge and review what we actually did at Mural in order to weather the storm and lay the groundwork that we'll continue to build on today. Let's get started. As you already know, I currently lead the product marketing team at Mural. Previously, I worked at Twitter for almost 5 years across business product marketing and the vertical marketing team. Working at Twitter taught me a lot of lessons and best practices that I've applied at Mural. Prior to Twitter, I learned best-in-class marketing from one of the biggest brands in the world at Budweiser, part of Anheuser-Busch InBev. Going back a little bit further, I have a business degree and an undergrad degree from the University of Virginia, as well as a graphic design degree from Parsons School of Design. I've worked on some very well-known brands and taken lessons from each and every experience. But enough about me, let's talk about Mural. Mural was born in 2011 by our 3 Argentine co-founders, all with backgrounds in gaming, which drove their focus on the visual canvas. In 2014, Mural entered the prestigious IDEO Startup in Residence program, which helped hone the product and the business model, ultimately leading to the product that you see before you today. Over the past 2+ years, Mural has raised its Series A, B, and C for total funding of around $200 million. There are now over 800 Mural employees, or as we call them, Muralistas, worldwide. I'll talk a little more soon about how much that number has grown recently. Some very recent news for the company is that we were just named one of Deloitte's Technology Fast 500 companies in North America for 2021, attributed to 520% revenue growth over the past 3 calendar years. We also just won a Prodi Award from the Product School as the top visual collaboration platform, voted on by product managers around the world. These recognitions of strong performance are important in helping us attract top talent, which I will speak some more about later on. Now, let's talk a little bit about Mural, the product. Mural is a visual collaboration platform. The Mural product is a visual thinking canvas with features to guide playful and engaging teamwork. Through a community of experts, we also help our customers deploy best practices at scale to transform how their teams collaborate together. With Mural, teams imagine together to solve problems, create new ideas, and drive innovation. Teams find value with Mural in helping them to brainstorm and ideate. I'll zoom in a little bit here for you. To brainstorm and ideate, plan and strategize, execute impactful client engagements, create fun meetings and workshops, and perform research, design, and analysis methods. Now with Mural, you can either start with a blank slate or use one of hundreds of templates that Mural offers to kickstart collaboration. You can see here an example of a template for an Agile Scrum meeting. Mural is available on standard web browsers, which is what I'm using here, as well as iOS, Android, Windows, and macOS apps. Mural is trusted by over 90% of the Fortune 100. We work with some of the biggest names in tech, financial services, and consulting, along with industry leaders across a lot of other categories. There are a lot more logos in our Salesforce dashboards that we're not able to share in marketing materials, but if you aren't a Mural member yourself already, there's a good chance that someone in your organization is. Oh, and by the way, you should sign up because it's now free forever. We launched our free forever plan this past August. But enough of a sales pitch. That's definitely not my strong suit, nor why I'm here today. Let's talk about the challenge we faced at Mural to build a product marketing team while growing at hyper speed. Now, first, let's take a look at this chart. This chart shows Mural's usage starting in January of 2020. You can see over here. And running through June 2020. But I actually want to start over a little bit further to the left over here. This is November 2019, and this is when I joined Mural as the first product marketer. I was also the 11th US employee and approximately employee number 100 globally. It was definitely a different world back then for many reasons. Over the first 6 months of my time at Mural, I started by doing a lot of learning, as well as teaching and informing about the role of product marketing at a B2B SaaS startup. However, my plans changed along with everybody else's in March of 2020. This is when COVID took hold of the world, and seemingly overnight, every company went remote. Also seemingly overnight, Mural went from a product that was a nice to have to a product that was a must have. You can see by the sharp rise in our usage that the change was dramatic. We experienced a 15x growth in a matter of days and weeks. You can ignore these dips right here in this chart as they represent times like weekends and holidays when our usage naturally decreases. Now this chart, as I said, ends at June 2020, but our growth has done nothing to slow down since. With the world now firmly in an uncertain mix of remote, hybrid, and distributed work arrangements, the demand for Mural remains strong, and our product is enabling teams everywhere to innovate faster, no matter where they are located. But let's hop back here to March of 2020 for a second. It really illustrates the challenge that we faced and how I was thinking about building the product marketing team at Mural. As I said, we were all a little bit mind blown at this stage. And let's emphasize that a little bit by inserting a GIF for ourselves here. You're definitely mind blown. And to say we had to come up quickly with a growth plan would definitely be an understatement. Now, the company at this stage, you can see here, was still merely about 120 people, with only 5 marketers, one of which was our CMO who had just started, and me as the only product marketer with a tenure of less than 6 months. The work weeks got very long, very quickly. I had calls early in the morning, late at night, over the weekend. Something had to be done, but what? I had to figure out quickly how to solve for the product marketing needs of a company in literal hypergrowth. Sellers were slacking me left and right for messaging and materials. Executives were rethinking our entire go-to-market strategy and needed support in building the narrative and training our sales and customer success organizations. I also had to figure out how to scale my impact as a one-person PMM team while moving at 100 miles an hour. I couldn't be everywhere, but I had to help everyone. Luckily, I had some best practices I could draw on to help solve for this problem. Lastly, I really needed to bring on some rock star PMMs to help me build the plane while flying. I knew I needed people who were up for the challenge. I also wanted to bring on good people who would be fun to work with and make me want to get up for work every day. Now, let's take a look at what we did to answer these pressing questions. The immediate solution to the challenges we faced came in 3 areas: knowing your audience, building a foundation, and hiring great people. Sounds simple, right? Well, let's take a dive into each one. Knowing your audience. It might sound pretty expected, but when your company starts to see a waterfall of demand from every corner of the business world, the top universities around the globe, and even government institutions, you really need a clear picture of who you're targeting in order to maintain and build on the inbound demand that you're seeing. At Mural, we built a target audience framework that has driven our go-to-market efforts ever since. We pulled data from all possible sources to build it: the product, our content, our customers, and from the minds of some of the most tenured muralistas. The framework resembled a radar or a bullseye. This here is a representation of what it actually looks like. And it was divided into different slices that represented each of our target teams. Within each team, we identified target roles that would most likely to find value with Mural. The center of the bullseye, the more likely it was to find value more quickly. Ultimately, we want every role to move toward the center because it will signify people are getting more and more value over time. For each role, we also listed out the top 5 use cases based on data in our existing knowledge base. This framework helped create focus for messaging, positioning, web pages, one-pagers, trainings, demand campaigns, email copy, and much, much more. It has been a guiding force in the success that we have seen. I wish I could share the actual exact bullseye with you, but it's confidential for obvious reasons. Now, let's talk about number 2, building a foundation. When it came to the needs of the product marketing stakeholders internally, as well as externally, we needed to create foundational resources that would be able to scale as our company grew to meet the skyrocketing demand. Whether it was internal communication, one-pagers and slide decks, business frameworks, presentations and demos, internal trainings, we had to put things in place in order to support our growth. Having a tech stack, especially when it was just me, or even 3 to 4 people on the product marketing team, was vital for our success. So first, we adopted HighSpot to help organize and centralize our sales enablement materials, pitch decks, and one-pagers. We also adopted Crayon to centralize our competitive intelligence, as well as provide a powerful tool to amplify our efforts at tracking our category and competitors. We used Confluence as our internal wiki to create a single source of truth and to drive everyone there first to find answers to their questions. Mural had long before adopted Slack, but we created a dedicated product marketing Slack channel to help get our updates out to the people who needed to hear them most, while also providing one location for our stakeholders to ask us questions. Lastly, we established a regular cadence of live product marketing update meetings, where we could present information and take questions on the fly. These meetings started monthly, but eventually moved to every other week as the amount of information we had to share continued to grow. Now, let's be honest, some of these tools required significant budget outlays, but we were able to quickly prove the value of each as the needs became self-evident across the organization. Now, let's move to my favorite solution, hiring great people. When anyone asks me what I love most about working at Mural, I always say the people. I love the product marketing team that we've put together, and I love the teams that we get to partner with internally day in and day out. I want to start with this quote here from Doris Kearns Goodwin. Good leadership requires you to surround yourself with people of diverse perspectives who can disagree with you without fear of retaliation. Not only did I want to build a team of people I enjoyed working with, but I also wanted to hire people who were going to challenge me, sometimes even make fun of me, which I don't mind. I want to create a psychologically safe environment because I think it's an absolute requirement to be a successful team, especially in a high-pressure, hyper-growth phase. So in looking to hire the second product marketer and beyond, I first looked to cover the core tenets of product marketing: messaging and positioning, product content, and then feature launches. We needed to create consistency in our messaging and positioning. I was still less than 6 months into my time at Mural, and the messaging was still all over the map. In order to support our growth, we needed everyone singing from the same song sheet. I also knew that our product content needed to be elevated. Our design team at that point was one person and a contractor. We used all of their capacity to help us add polish and shine so that our prospects and customers had no choice but to adopt Mural. In time, we would add many more creative resources internally, as well as top-notch video production agency externally to up-level our entire website, produce engaging videos and GIFs, design professional emails and social assets, and much more. But we need a product marketer to help guide these efforts and make sure that our messaging and positioning resonated and was consistent across all deliverables and all channels. Lastly, what is a product marketing team without feature launches? Our product team began scaling up along with the rest of the company in March of 2020. Our release cadence went from every 3 weeks to once per week, so we could ship improvements to our products in near real time. We needed to have someone dedicated to working with our product team early and often to make sure that new features we launched were properly enabled with stakeholders to drive adoption at scale. Bringing on a seasoned feature launch product marketer gave me the opportunity to focus on filling gaps and clearing blockers across the entire team. We continue to build out the product marketing team at Mural around a very similar structure today. Our 9th and 10th team members just started last month, and we've got 2 more additions coming very soon. At the end of the day, you want to be able to wake up in the morning and log into your first Zoom meeting and be excited to get shit done with the faces on the other end. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed speaking to you about my experience at Mural thus far. Please feel free to reach out to me with questions or comments on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Gmail. Have a great rest of your day.
Here at Product Marketing Alliance, we're continually pulling out all the stops to help you navigate the product marketing landscape. It's a competitive industry that's fast, agile, and constantly evolving, and we can't stress enough just how important it is to hit your A game and stand out amongst the crowd. To help you do just that, we've teamed up with product marketing experts from the world's biggest brands, including Google, HubSpot, Facebook, and Adobe, to put together a series of qualifications designed to help you upskill, scale your product, and reach new heights. And such is the quality of the material we've laid out for your journey, we've gained praise from companies such as Sky, Microsoft, and TikTok. While there isn't necessarily a set path, we recommend kicking off with Product Marketing Certified Core, PMA's very own product marketing certification, covering the A to Z of product marketing. The course hones in on every product marketing principle and is guaranteed to provide you with the skills and knowledge to help you grab key concepts by the horns. Transitioning into life as a product marketer, you're in the right place. Looking to fine-tune existing credentials? We've got you covered. Our certification ticks all the boxes. Having completed the first stage of your journey with Core, it's time to take the next step and switch your focus to Product Marketing Certified Masters, our collection of specialist courses delving into topics covered in the Core certification in even more detail. Deep diving into key topics like personas, narrative design, segmentation, and customer advisory boards, and with plenty more in the works, our Masters courses are guaranteed to revolutionize your practice. And last, but by no means least, it's time to wrap up your journey, level up your leadership skills, and enroll in Product Marketing Certified Leadership. From product marketing strategies to building and scaling product marketing teams and budgets to product-led growth, pricing, data visualization, and analyst relations, our course is ideal for aspiring, new, or established product marketing leaders. Ready to start your product marketing journey? Head to productmarketingalliance.com to learn more about our collection of certifications available.
working from home. Time to make some progress on this blog post. What's this? Account executives, do you have healthcare case studies? No, of course not. Proof points about how we're different, better than competitors? What's wrong with the sales team? ROI stats for the website. Man, positive reviews on G2. This is ridiculous. Wait a second. I forgot we have user evidence. Hey team, it's all here. We're good.
Whether you're joining a Product Marketing Alliance event for the first time, or if you're a seasoned regular, welcome to Product Marketing Trailblazers. We have an awesome selection of innovative content lined up for you this week. But before we dive in, I just want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, speakers, and you, our lovely audience, for joining us. From wherever in the world you are watching, we're sure you'll enjoy today's talks. To get the most out of these sessions, please ensure you're sharing your feedback and asking your questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. Each of the recordings from today's sessions will be added to our on-demand library. If you aren't already, then why not become a PMA Pro member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, and our entire library of video content from all our events. So with all that to come, let's dive right in.
Hello, greetings from New York. I'm Jacqueline Keller and I'm part of the product marketing team at Samsung Ads, where I focus on our foundational product marketing work streams as well as the go-to-market efforts for Samsung Ads tech platforms. I'm excited to be joining you all today. Special thank you to the Product Marketing Alliance for hosting me and organizing this whole virtual conference. So I'll be taking a bit of an untraditional approach for sharing product marketing best practices. I've been dreaming of Europe. I haven't been since 2017, and this likely influenced my focus and approach to today's topic. I also have a 4.5-year-old who's been learning about French art in school. Her name is Stevie, and currently her favorite color is rainbow. She brought home what I'd consider a visualization of the foundational role that product marketers play in their organizations. As I've had the opportunity to listen and speak with other product marketers, I determined that there are certain responsibilities specific to us, regardless of the company's size or of the focus. Product marketers as a whole are tasked with collecting and connecting the dots across the business. But something that's less standard is the process to do this. As a product marketer, how do you know where to start? In the real world, we're not handed a map where the starting point is clearly marked with the number 1. Preschool's a little bit different, but real world, not so much. Today, I'll be sharing an approach that has become a type of playbook for the market intelligence efforts at Samsung Ads. And at the core of this framework is the important role of understanding context to inform your starting point. And as we all know from the past 2 years, one clear benefit of a virtual summit is the ability to join regardless of where you're sitting. So I'm going to venture across the Atlantic and take a figurative trip to some of my favorite museums in Europe. And these places and the art will help illustrate the important role market intelligence plays in driving product market fit and the go-to-market strategy. And in reviewing these steps together, we'll determine the relationship between Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa and 16th century Europe. So excited to take this journey with you. I'm certainly not qualified to be a museum tour guide. I've spent a lot of times in museums, however, and in 2015, I went to many European museums with my younger brother, Josh, after I earned my master's degree. And to be clear, that was a master's of business, not a master's of art. But what I did take was an art history class in college that I loved. And what I found fascinating then and continue to rediscover with art is the way in which it represents the cutting edge innovation from a specific moment in time, and also how it serves as a type of social commentary. Honestly, I probably learned more from my art history class in college about democracy than I did from my political science coursework. So let's take a look at some examples. The first piece you'll see here is the Nike of Samothrace. It's a striking piece in the Louvre sitting at the top of the main staircase. It's from the Hellenistic era. In fact, the base of the monument is shaped in the style of Greek Hellenistic warships. This era as a whole represents the military conquest of Alexander the Great, where he endeavored to reach the end of the world and the great outer sea, in his words. One statue represents so much impact and the values that would be revitalized during the Renaissance and actually even inform our buildings that represent democracy, like the White House today. The second portrait here is Leonardo da Vinci's Virgin of the Rocks. As I'm sure we've all learned in history class, the Renaissance was a time of rediscovering classical learnings. Renaissance literally means rebirth, with a focus on values like individualism, secularism, worldliness, skepticism, or the importance of asking questions, and also the importance of being well-rounded or informed. And at this time, these values found themselves in all facets of life, including obviously art. And for Leonardo da Vinci, he developed a new technique called sfumato to actually help bring some of these values, this realism, to life. And sfumato, as he described it, was not using the lines of borders. Instead, it was actually shading it in the manner of smoke to produce a soft transition. And the impact of this is that the art was much more believable. It was more real. It stood up that Renaissance value. And the last piece you'll see here, also found in the Louvre, is done by Eugene Delacroix, and it captures the spirit of the French Revolution. For those Les Mis fans out there, when you think about the French Revolution, you think about kind of chaos in the streets, and you see a lot of this embodied here. You see Notre Dame in the smoke-filled background. You see folks from all walks of life, a gentleman with a top hat implies he's wealthy, a young boy carrying a pistol, and the French flag. What is most interesting when I was learning about this piece is the fact that 1830 was nearly 50 years after the first French Revolution, but a lot of the motifs still applied. And I learned a history lesson because I learned that this actually was a moment in time captured by Delacroix that was called the July Revolution, or the Second French Revolution. And the difference between the first French Revolution and the second was the shift of power in 1830 was to kingship based on a constitution. And that is illustrated in the painting by the female figure. You could see the citizens following this female figure who's holding the French flag, and it's intended to embody the concept of liberty driven by a constitution. All three of these works speak volumes to the macro social, economic, and political climate of their times. Shifting to the modern application for a product marketer, here are some broad market themes. The specific relevancy and impact may change depending on your product and the market in which you compete, but they still are pretty relevant across the board. The first is measurement. The theme has been around for years, but it's truly evolved with tech capabilities, just how we collect the data inputs, what we measure, how we determine success. It's more complex than ever before. And there are also even more nuanced ethical and regulatory considerations today, given our technology capabilities. Digital transformation is where companies consider how their products and business processes can be improved through digital technology. And as technology improves at a rapid speed, it's important for product marketers to assess a product market fit and go-to-market launch plans through this lens. And finally, this theme of social responsibility. This is for both individuals and corporations. And the concept here is that we expect each other to act in the best interests of the environment and of broader society. And to take these market themes a step further, we must consider market dynamics. This refers to the forces that impact the prices and the behaviors of businesses and consumers. So from a product marketing perspective, market dynamics accelerate the trends or the themes. So let's use COVID-19, this global pandemic, as an example. First, looking at this new digital shopping habits were developed during COVID. So research showed that consumers that had never shopped online or explored e-commerce did so during COVID out of necessity and safety precautions, and that this kind of created this habit that didn't exist before. Another example is the pandemic's impact on hybrid work. Research by Microsoft indicates that hybrid work is the next great disruption. And some stats that they shared was that there are 5x the amount of virtual job postings on LinkedIn than there were prior to the pandemic, and nearly 50% of people who responded to a survey said that they were moving physically to different cities because of the flexibility that hybrid work brings about. The study pointed out that hybrid work is also good for democratizing access to major opportunity because talent is everywhere in a hybrid work world. So that's some positive aspects of this. And thirdly, this trend of streaming. So this is something that our analytics and insights team at Samsung Ads identified in the early days of lockdown. And in a thought leadership report aptly named Behind the Screens, we've published consumer behavior learnings and viewership trends for the broader industry. And what we saw is that there was an influx of streaming during the early days of the pandemic, with the greatest streaming growth to date being in the second quarter of 2020 at nearly 40%. So we see in Q3 2019, it was a growth rate of 12%, and then it jumped to 39%. And similar to the digital e-commerce shopping and also hybrid work, we see firsthand from our proprietary data that streaming is here to stay. You see there are no declines here, with streaming maintaining over 60% share of time. And as a product marketer, understanding these consumer behaviors and macro trends have helped inform my starting point for various tracks and diligence work. All starts with the context. So once you found your starting point using market context, the next step in the market intelligence playbook is listening to customers, both what they're saying and what they're not saying. There are market surveys and research reports that are available, and depending on your industry, kind of depends on the level that's available off the shelf, so to speak. But I will say that nothing can replace conversations with your customers, directly talking to them in a one-on-one way. At Samsung Ads, we do have a formal program in which we speak to our actual customers and our target customers to better understand their needs and ensure that our products are satisfying those needs. And this practice of speaking with core customers is not a new concept. Botticelli was a Renaissance artist, and he initially made his living painting religious art with scenes from the church. And you can see this in the first painting, Madonna and Child with the young St. John the Baptist. But during that time, his customer set expanded, so to speak, from the church to wealthy patrons like the Medici family. He was actually welcomed to live within their home where he could focus just on art and not have to worry about room and board. And it was in listening to their conversations and engaging with them that he started developing a different perspective in terms of what he should include in his art. He kind of refined that product market fit. And you can see here how his style evolved and the topics he covered evolved as well, even his skill. The portrait of a young man is highlighted in terms of the realism that was coming through during the Renaissance and various paintings. And the work of The Birth of Venus is probably one of his most famous masterpieces. And it was speculated to be commissioned by the Medicis, but it was kind of controversial in nature, so it was kept secret for years. But you can see here how he evolved his style and he evolved the topics he covered. And I would describe this as kind of always revisiting that product market fit. And the generous patronage of the Medici family allowed Botticelli and other Renaissance artists to focus on their work. We might consider the Medicis during the Renaissance kind of the power users or the primary customer of Renaissance art. A more recent example that highlights the importance of listening to customers is Lexus's 1989 launch. Before launching the Lexus brand, Toyota actually sent their designers and their marketers to America to interview customers and dealerships. They had a lot of data on hand that they had analyzed, and they knew that there was an opportunity to expand to a luxury vehicle for Toyota. But before actually going and doing that, they wanted to validate their hypothesis. And from this hands-on research, they discovered that they could not launch a luxury vehicle under the name Toyota because the US market would not perceive it as a true luxury car if it sat next to a Toyota Corolla on a lot. That completely changed their strategy. They launched a new brand, not just a new Toyota model, all because they went and spoke to their customers. Like, incredibly powerful. And here are some mechanisms that we use to help us understand our customers' needs and for our strategies at Samsung Ads. Starts with industry research. This is kind of broad looking. We also have market surveys where if we want to double click on a specific topic or ask various questions in a focus area, we use market surveys. We also have focus groups, both internally and externally. And finally, as I mentioned before, direct conversations with our customers. And this can vary depending on the specific product or category. So the next stop in our market intelligence framework is competitive intelligence. This helps us understand the options currently available to customers and where our product might fit in. Dot number 3. So going back to our tour, Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo are known Renaissance artists and also known rivals. Although Michelangelo was about 50 years old when, or Leonardo was about 50 years old when Michelangelo became known for sculpting David when he was just 26 years old. And I always found their different approach to realism quite striking. They both studied the human body. They helped guide their art based on what they learned about the human body and informed their artistic approaches, but each approach was very unique to them. For example, Leonardo da Vinci's work is perfectly drawn within a circle and a square using the proportions he found from measuring models. And here he illustrates the symmetry of humans and helped bridge the gap between art and mathematics, kind of showing symmetry using math. It's literally symmetrical. Michelangelo, on the other time, sculpted David to illustrate balance and realism, but the statue itself is not symmetrical or proportional at all. So it's 17 feet tall, which is literally larger than life. You'll see that his head and his hands are quite large. It's disproportional to the rest of his body. And the thing that's interesting here is that Michelangelo's approach was to create a work so that it would be perceived as real by the audience. So while Leonardo's is accurate in nature from a realism perspective, Michelangelo's is not technically accurate, but the perception from the audience would be that it was real, that it was accurate based on where they were standing. So he effectively communicated his intended message or realism. And from a product marketing perspective, I think that both artists teach us different ways in which we can solve a problem to deliver on market requirements. They both wanted to highlight this Renaissance ideal of balance, of symmetry and harmony, but they developed strikingly different products to achieve this objective. And contrasted to the realism of the Renaissance, Matisse and Picasso painted art that was considered ugly, not real, very abstract. And they actually together helped evolve the world's definition of beauty in art. They are regarded as the fathers of 20th century's modern art. And they met in 1906, did not initially like each other, and did not like each other's paintings at first. But then for the following 50 years, they definitely created, I guess, friendly rivalry. I would call them frenemies of 20th century art. They engaged in this friendly competition and they actually drove forward modern art, and it became well known today. In fact, I read that Picasso once said, if I were not making the paintings I make, I would paint like Matisse. And Matisse compared their relationship to a boxing match, just kind of like always driving the other to improve. From a product marketing perspective, I think that this dynamic between Picasso and Matisse illustrate the value of collaboration to drive innovation. They were both committed to helping the world see beauty in a new way. Matisse has been described as a cool, calm artist, and Picasso a hot, temperamental one. Matisse famously said that a painting should be like a comfortable chair. His paintings are harmonious, luxurious, soothing. And Picasso's work, on the other hand, might be described as dissonant, disturbed, even violent. These are two still life pictures, and they took dramatically different approaches. They give you a very different feeling, but they're both modern art. From these artists, we can also learn the importance of product differentiation. So though they were serving similar markets, these artists had different unique selling propositions. Something I read that captured this nuance was how Matisse loved fabric and Picasso loved flesh. Both modern art, but approached it quite differently, and they had a different USP. From a tactical perspective, there are different ways product marketers can gather competitive intelligence. At Samsung Ads, we might explore publicly available information and kind of analyze it and drive it and try to determine where we might have a unique advantage or where we need to match baseline expectations in terms of the standard that's in market. We may speak to our customers to better understand their needs and how they're currently being solved to determine if there's room for a substitute. And then ultimately bringing all the information together into resources for internal teams. We use battle cards and objection handling to make sure that everyone is aligned and informed to address questions that might come up. So the key takeaway of this market intelligence framework is that to develop a go-to-market strategy, to get to number 4, it's as much about the journey as it is the destination. And you can see that line keeps going because it never really stops. It's not really linear. You could be working on a go-to-market and get a piece of information, a new dot that you need to infuse into the go-to-market plan or to refine your approach. It's kind of this always-on machine getting smarter. It's as much about the journey as the destination, but I don't know if you ever really get to the destination. You always have to improve, especially with how technology works today. And it's all the diligence together that helps in connecting and collecting these dots. So, what would Mona Lisa have been without 16th century Europe? Well, that's kind of a trick question because it was the context of the time that made the Mona Lisa so remarkable. As I mentioned earlier, the Renaissance was a time where those Hellenistic values were rebirthed. The Mona Lisa brings to life the values of secularism, realism, individualism. It was all those dots that Da Vinci kind of pulled together and brought to life with the Mona Lisa that we know. Mona Lisa is considered secular because it's a portrait of a woman and does not have anything to do with God or religion. The realism is shown in the colors, in her garments, in the use of sfumato. And the value of individualism is clear, as this is a portrait of a single person. It's almost as if Leonardo was working with a similar market intelligence framework. This work is considered the quintessential example of Leonardo showing major Renaissance ideals within his work. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, and I think it's even more powerful if you have an understanding of the Renaissance and what it meant for that time. And that wraps up my little trip to European museums. Thank you so much for your time. I hope to literally see you in Europe next time, and please do reach out if you're in New York. Thanks again.
Welcome back to Product Marketing Trailblazers. We're about to join another awesome talk, but just before we do, I want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, speakers, and you, our wonderful audience, for making this event possible. With expert presentations and specialist talks on the agenda, you are in for a real treat today. Please ensure you're sharing your feedback and asking all questions in the comments section of the video, as our speakers will be answering them throughout the day. After the event, a great place to continue the discussion is in the PMA Slack community. So if you aren't already a member, hop on over and join the conversation. And if that's still not enough, then why not become a PMA Pro member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, our entire library of event content, and much, much more. So with all that to come, let's dive right in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Product Marketing Trailblazers. We have an awesome live discussion session for you now to get your teeth stuck into on why product marketers should prioritize win-loss analysis. So I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Spencer Dent and Bailey Haslam from Closed and Ethan Preet from MX. So as this is a live session, please do add your questions and comments in the chat box section, and I'll be hopping on to put them to the team after their discussion. So over to you, Bailey.
Thank you, Rose. I'm Bailey Haslam. I'm a marketing director here at Close. We're really thrilled to be here. I wanted to make a quick note that we're here with Spencer. We did have Andrew on the docket originally, but his wife is having a baby any minute here. So we are really thrilled to have Spencer with us today.
Yeah, you guys got the lesser half of the Closed founders. Sorry, everyone. No, we're super excited to be here. Excited to be partnering with PMA. PMA is a great institution, awesome organization. We've had good success working with them in the past, and I think it's a great tool and source of expertise and knowledge for a lot of product marketers, because product marketers, it's funny for us because we work with a lot of product marketers. That role, depending upon the organization you're in, is very different. So having a source of here's what product marketers are working on and this is what the best product marketers are doing is awesome. So really excited to be part of this event. We've got our buddy here.
Happy to be here as well. Ethan Preet from MX, and also super grateful to be here. Love PMA, love the network of product marketers. I think if there's anything that product marketing really stands for, it's that collaborative group that's willing to network and to share ideas and concepts. And also a big fan of Close, so happy to be here with the team as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ethan, for being here. To kick us off, would you tell us a little bit about your role at MX and, you know, within your responsibilities, where does win-loss analysis fit in?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a senior product marketer at MX, which is a fintech company. We sell technology to other fintech companies to connect bank accounts to any app, really. Mm-hmm. It could be an e-commerce company, everything from Amazon down to like a personal financial management app where you're moving money, like a Truebill or something. We also sell to a lot of big banks as well. And in terms of my responsibilities, I work a lot with, rather than just the individual products, I actually work with an entire segment of our business, which is specifically two fintechs. So it spans a few different products, but I think for us, win-loss really lives in the product marketing organization. And for me in particular, it's being able to tell these stories, saying, you know, obviously we have the qualitative or the quantitative data of here are the numbers, but how can we actually tell a story which is tangible, which we can take to other departments to say, this is what we're actually hearing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm sure that probably fits into your win-loss journey and how you got started. So will you tell us a little bit about how you got started and win-loss?
Yeah, win-loss. What's funny is win-loss is one of these terms that can mean 1,000 things depending upon who you're talking to. The first time I got exposure to this concept was It was about 10 years ago. I just graduated from business school, and I was working in management consulting. And most of what I was doing when I worked at Bain & Company was big kind of commercial excellence, go to market strategy type work. And it was always amazing to me and interesting to me how like these companies would invest millions and millions of dollars into their sales processes and training and everything else, and they wouldn't know why they won or lost the deals. And it was kind of like shocking. I remember the first time it like became really, really clear to me was I was working with a client to help them revamp their bid process. This was a huge commercial construction company. So they're bidding for like $500 million deals. And they spend 2 years chasing this thing. Wow. Like $1 million effort to try to win the deal.
Right.
And they lost the deal and they had no idea why. Yeah. You're like, whoa. So that was the first kind of exposure I got to it. And then the great irony is then from there, I went and worked at Qualtrics, which is an incredible company. Like they've revolutionized feedback from how do you operationalize things like customer experience and employee engagement from a feedback standpoint. And the great irony is as a feedback company, we didn't actually have good visibility into why we won and lost deals. And we went out to market and looked around and wondered why there wasn't a better solution. And that led us into the space. So in 2017, Andrew and I left Qualtrics and we started Closed. And here we are 5 years later. We're or almost 5 years later, and it's been great. We've grown significantly. Our team is awesome. We've really tried to take this approach of how do you set up a platform that allows a company to have the right tools to conduct win-loss analysis at scale and cover their whole pipeline and have really in-depth, powerful interviews, but also complement that with other options. So it's been awesome. We love it. We see tons of value in it. And that's evidenced by the fact that it's an emerging and growing practice. It's 5 years ago, people would kind of scratch their heads when you would talk about this and say, yeah, that makes sense. Now it's becoming adopted more rapidly especially across B2B industries.
So with all that, how would you define win-loss analysis?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Because oftentimes when I think of win-loss, I think of this is a systematic, operationalized approach for how you understand why you win and why you lose deals. It's not a one-off, sometimes depending upon where you're at in a maturity curve, it could be like hey, we got a tiger team together and we all went and we studied our CRM and we talked to a couple of customers and we came back with a PowerPoint deck that was like, these are the 5 reasons. That's like the junior varsity kind of lower level version of win-loss that, people, the more advanced companies were doing that are more advanced today, they were doing that 10 years ago. The most advanced companies are doing this in a very systematic, essentially automated approach. And they're using multiple ways to engage buyers and to engage their sales team and to analyze their CRM, but they do it in a holistic way where they can bring that all together and say, here's what's happening to my win rate, and here's why that's happening to my win rate, and here's who my competitors are, and here's where I'm strong and weak against them, and doing it in a very systematic, ongoing approach. So that is the potential of win-loss. And that's what we try to coach most of our clients to do. And the evolution of this market is going to be to flip itself on its head from a one-off, let's go do a little study, to an ongoing, basically embedded part of your operation.
Interesting. So win-loss lives within product marketing. And I'm sure you're on a similar page to what Spencer described. How does how has win-loss enabled you as a product marketer to do your job better?
Yeah, I think for us, honestly, when we're breaking it down, it's given us a spot at the table. I think a lot of times the struggle we have as product marketers is really having that attribution to show the value that you bring, because when you think about departments like demand generation or even most of the RevOps, like it's very much tied to revenue. Your performance is directly correlated with the dollar amount that you can bring in, but in a strategic role that can be difficult. And so one of the things we found is that we've had a seat at the table as we've been able to identify exactly what Spencer was saying, the how and the why. I think for us, it's that ability, and I mentioned it before, but to tell a story. Every single week now, our CEO actually has a report that we send him where he's able to go through it. It's kind of like our key highlights of, what's going on, what should he know, what are the stories that he should be telling to our board and the other executive board as well. And when you think about that why and how for us, I think the example that always comes to mind is if you're looking at Harry Potter, if you're just reading the story as like a numbers game, you're like, okay, orphan boy graduates school, that's it. But if you're really diving into the actual, like what I would consider to be almost like a similar win-loss, it's talking about the entire book, the journey, what he's going through. And I think the same thing about basketball. I love advanced statistics, and I could look at a box score of the Utah Jazz, my favorite basketball team, and that tells one story of maybe what happened, but doesn't really help me to get what I should be doing, what I should know, what the journey was along the way. And so I think for us, like, it really has been just identifying what is happening, what is the how, what is the why, what are changes we can actually make in our organization, what are the needs that we have, what are the gaps that we're not seeing, what are the opportunities that we should consider. And that has given us the opportunity as well to not just go within our own department, but also cross-departmentally. Our corporate development team, our executive board, sales team, RevOps, etc.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're nodding your head. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, I think one of the mistakes that people make sometimes with win-loss is they think of it in a very narrow way. Like, I'm a product marketing manager. My job is to go out and help us figure out how our product fits within our market.
Right.
Right. Like, and they think about it in a very narrow way, and they think the job is done, when they've created the report that tells you that the job, that's only the beginning of the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of what you want to be doing if you really want a seat at the table, you have to show how you can get that information and enable the rest of the organization. One of the things that we see at Closed is how much win-loss is used by different leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a sales team can use the win-loss, the information they gather from win-loss feedback, whether that's through a survey, whether that's through an interview, whether that's through just looking at their CRM and seeing what's happening to win rates, to enable their sales team, to train their sales team better. Hey, we won this deal because we did these things. How do we go replicate that from a skill standpoint? Hey, we lost these deals because our demo doesn't work for this industry, or whatever that happens to be. Let's go adapt and change that and scale it across. From a product standpoint, we're losing deals because our UI, or we're losing deals because our API doesn't work with this certain, or we don't have the right integration partners, et cetera. Whatever those things happen to be, capturing that, harnessing that from the voice of the buyer and giving that to the people in the organization that can go run with it is key. And if you become that source, that conduit to the market for your organization, like, that is the seat at the table, mm-hmm. right? And one of the things that I would say, and I don't say this to scare product marketers, but like, this is what we see. What we're seeing increasingly is leadership teams and investors, boards, et cetera. This is a question they want answered, and they want it answered in real time. Why are we winning and losing? What do we have to do to go grow? Instead of at 30%, at 38%, what do we have to do to displace this competitor, et cetera, whatever those things happen to be? That is a question that is being asked, and there's pressure on them to have that answer. And the right place for that to sit in most organizations is product marketing. But the challenge that some product marketers run into is they don't think about, how do you operationalize this feedback loop? How do you set it up so that in an ongoing way, you can have this feedback coming into your organization? Because if you set it up the right way, you're managing stakeholders and you're doing it from a partnership standpoint. And it's less about, hey, give me credit because I stood up in this meeting and showed you guys a really cool PowerPoint, and more about, hey, I'm helping that information go straight from the buyer right to the people on your team that need it so that they can move, whether it's a product team or a sales enablement team, whatever. But the caution I would give product marketers is, this is something that we've actually seen, and it will either elevate you and give you that seat at the table, or if you're unable to execute on it, we've seen situations where companies have chosen to let win-loss sit in the RevOps function, or they've chosen to have it sit in the product function, or they've chosen to put it with a chief of staff, mm-hmm. to the executive team. So it's one of those things where there's so much value at stake for the company that it's really important that you execute it really, really well. So, and there's lots of resources out there to teach you how to do this and do it in a systematic way. But sometimes it requires a little bit of a shift in the paradigm from like, hey, I'm a project-based kind of report-driven, like sometimes product marketers, especially that are stepping into the role for the first time, can be a little reactive. They're waiting to be told what to do instead of going and driving the value to the org. This is one of those areas where you can move from being a reactive kind of, I'm waiting to be told what project I should go work on, to I can go put something in place that will tell the organization what projects they should be working on. And it's really hard to argue with the output from win-loss because it's tied directly to revenue, right? We're losing because of these things. We're winning because of these things. Let's go amplify this and go change this. And it's hard for a company to be like, oh, we should ignore that.
Right.
Yeah. I think that like resonated really well with me, because I think especially for companies that are at scale, which is basically any tech company, there are times when like the money ebbs and flows, where funding is coming in or it's not coming in or whatever, which may also correlate with the wins and the losses. And I think for us, just kind of tying this back to my own experience, like there are times when we'll just win like the majority of deals anyway because of where we sit in the market. But that doesn't mean we can't be planning right now to be proactive. I think what we've seen in the past is when we haven't been able to get that systematic approach to this, when we have a process in place to gather this intel, then we're not seeing how we do scale. We're just saying, well, we're winning deals. There's no point in this. We're not seeing why we're winning deals. And so we don't know where to allocate resources to actually scale. And if we don't scale with like the appropriate allocations to these things, understanding why we're winning, then, you know, in a few months or in a few years, as we start to grow and get these bigger deal sizes, it's going to collapse because we're not, you know, properly redistributed or whatever.
Yeah, you're almost guessing.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, you're guessing.
And that's honestly what a lot of companies do, right? Like they sit around a table, and what this is what you don't want in your company. What you don't want is you don't want the executives sitting around a table like this, and they're pontificating and just relying almost on the anecdote, right? Like I'm a product manager and I went on 3 sales calls and this came up one time, so I'm going to go shift the entire roadmap to go address this one thing because it came up one time. Like that we might be tipping the boat over that one anecdote, right? And having a data-driven approach so that you can make a smart capital resource allocation decisions across your sales org, across your marketing org, across your product org, and then holistically across the whole board, right? Hey, we're going to pull some of our sales enablement budget and plow that into hiring or on the end side so we can fix some of these product problems so that we can then win more. Like that's the level of insight you can get. It's incredibly strategic. It's where to play, how to win in your market is what you get from win-loss. And so I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess just to double down on that, are there any ways that you feel like product marketing really can empower all the orgs that touch it, that you enable through win-loss?
100%. I think, again, just identifying how everything connects together, right? Like even some examples that we have. We had a deal that come through that we actually won. It was a large deal. And we typically operate with larger size deals, the $1 million plus. Yeah. And this deal came through, and I'm almost hesitant to say this, but the offer we came back, it was a big win. And so typically I would have really taken a look at that historically. Yeah. But because we now have this relationship with Close, we had a process set up to where we could do win-loss. And as I was reading the win analysis, I was kind of like stumped because I was like, wait a second. They're saying that we came in $1 million plus over a joint offer from actually a few of our competitors. They joined together to cut costs, to try and undercut us significantly. And we ended up winning the deal. And I was like, why on earth did we win this deal? Like, I mean, that seems like a pretty tantalizing offer. And when they actually went to like the closed door, like what you couldn't hear on a sales call, like their actual response, their raw words, it was really focused on our customer support, our approach, our mission and vision. And that was what they felt like was an alignment, so much so that they were willing to pay that premium cost for it. And it's something that we've heard in the past in various losses and also in deals that we win from competitors as well, when someone's switching for our expansion deals. We've heard, customer support as a common theme, but in being able to actually like identify that core competency, to have someone's words for it, to now tie that to the correlation we saw with our data, and then take that story and say, hey, customer support team, this is awesome. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, let's understand what the strength is here. Let's focus on this. Let's, redistribute those whatever we can, resources to make that stronger, or more available, and then taking it to the sales department and saying, hey, maybe we should make some assets regarding the sales enablement. Even like
let's
our
talk
client
about it.
support.
Let's make it a case study.
Let's make a case study.
Yeah, so that we can then go sell more to this. We think it's a strength. We've heard it a couple times, but now we actually have multiple examples. We can codify it and enable the sales team so we go win more deals.
Yeah.
I think that comes back to, I mentioned at the beginning with the reason I like PMA is because it's that way to actually get feedback and collaboration. I think win-loss is also, for a product marketer, it gives you the tools you need, the ammunition to then go give feedback to people. And another one we actually lost recently, as I was reading through the report, it came down to our ability to provide technical consulting in certain areas. And the team that's supposed to be providing that didn't know. And so I was able to come through and say, hey, this has come up actually a few times now. Here seems to be the common themes in this story. Is this something you feel like we could look into? It's something that is it worth fixing? And we were able to make some quick adjustments there. And just like that, now deals are changing from L's to W's. Yeah. And it was such a small fix just because there was that clear, raw feedback that we could then take with them and say, you may not have seen this, you may not have been able to aggregate all of this feedback into one spot.
And something you wouldn't have ever been able to really pinpoint what the problem was without doing a pretty, comprehensive approach to
At least not easily. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And the approach for, but maybe this is something we can talk about real fast. Not every business is the same, right? Like MX, like huge deals relative to other companies, right? So you guys are you're doing win-loss debrief interviews with those deals. They're complex deals. There's a lot of decision-making. There's a lot of requirements. They take a long time to get through the pipeline. So because of that, the tool or approach to win-loss that makes the most sense is let's go do an interview. Not every company has that same approach, right? Some companies are far more transactional. Some companies, it's like our average deal size is 5K, but we have 10,000 of those deals go through our pipeline every single quarter. Well, it's not going to financially or feasibly make sense to go interview all those deals. So a good way to think about this is the way you diagnose and set up your win-loss program for your company depends upon the composition of your pipeline, right? So if you're a highly transactional, lower relative deal size company, those transactions by nature are a little bit less intense. They may not require a, full blown, let's go interview this person and really, or multiple people, right? Like we have some clients where their deals are so big that they'll have us go interview multiple people within one deal. But then we have other clients where we will just send more of a pulse win-loss survey because it's a fairly transactional, simple deal. A good way to think about this, to put it in your mind, is think about it as a consumer, right? Like you can buy something online on Amazon, buy a pair of shoes. It's not that life-changing of a decision for you, right? So like you don't really, it would actually be kind of awkward to get on the phone with me and talk to me why you bought that pair of shoes, Bailey. Like you feel like you're like, I'm not sure I needed it, but
I just thought they were really cute. Yeah,
right. But when you buy a house or you buy a car, you take a longer amount of time. It's a bigger change. And it's the same thing with businesses, right? When they make smaller transactional decisions, they can give you feedback on why that made sense for them in a simpler way, typically through like a web form, right? Like type of survey. Whereas when they're making bigger decisions, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, not only is that like they need to take time to thoroughly do that on behalf of the business and be diligent about it, but also this is like career defining decisions for them too, right? Like I screw up and I choose the wrong provider. Like that could be a problem for me here in my business, right? Like I don't want my boss and my boss's boss and all the other stakeholders to be like, oh, Spencer's the guy who chose the crappy software vendor that then, impacted our business negatively for the next year and a half. You want to be the person that they chose, that they put it in place, and we saw a huge uplift in that aspect of our business. So the reason I share that with you is as you're thinking about your business, be mindful that like the approach and the mix of how you approach win-loss should be tailored specifically to the composition of your pipeline.
Right. Like that. Yeah. Well, then I guess with that, what are some challenges you see with companies that are trying to roll out a win-loss program?
I'd love to hear what you guys have. I think depends on the business.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges I think that you got to get over is you got to make sure that you set up a culture of collaboration across functions. If the sales team feels like this is just a witch hunt to get them in trouble, you're dead on arrival. Like it's not even going to work. If the product team feels like you're going rogue on them, they're going to be like, I don't care what feedback you're giving me about the product because it's not, I didn't have any input on it. So you really got to make sure culturally and that you set up from the get-go alignment across stakeholders. Another thing that I think we see a lot is you need to think about it more systematically, but one of the challenges that companies get into is if they're doing this for the first time, they don't really know how to start. One of my favorite things one of our clients has ever said to us, he started the program for a company called Avalar. They've been a client of Close from almost the beginning. And his feedback to other product marketing managers was just start the damn program. Right. It was awesome. Right. He's like basically what he said was, you can overbake this thing way too much. Right. Just whether it's like, hey, let's send some win-loss surveys or let's go start doing some interviews, just get started. And that will help you figure out how to shape it going forward. And, sometimes if you're doing this right, it does require a big investment, right? But the way you'll show value is by at least starting, right? Don't try to swallow an apple whole, get going, get moving.
Right. What about at MX? Like what's your program? Like you have executive buy-in. You were talking about your board earlier.
Honestly, I agree with a lot of what Spencer was saying. I think for us, that when he said the witch hunt, I was kind of chuckling to myself. I was like, yeah, that resonates. Yeah, I think the trickiest part about that is, I consider myself to be a disciple of the jobs to be done theory, and which is kind of how I view win-loss. To be honest with you, it's the kind of the basis for discovering what that jobs to be done is for a consumer. But I think it also takes that internal approach to set up that culture. That's exactly what we had to do, is making sure we were all aligned with what it actually was that we were doing. Making sure sales did know that it wasn't just a witch hunt. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care, but I have to understand that to that salesperson, he or she's probably thinking like, okay, well, my livelihood is this revenue that I'm generating. So if you're coming in there just looking for mistakes that I'm making, like you're threatening me.
Right.
That's definitely not the case, So
of course, yeah.
Making that very clear, as well as the product team. The product team doesn't want someone coming in every single day saying, hey, here are more requests that I want to put to your plate where you're already understaffed. You're already like super behind. Here are 10 more things we want you to work on for these deals, from sales. And they're like, oh my gosh, kill me. Like,
yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing is just get started. I love that. One of our mottos at MX is there are no silver bullets. It's just a shit ton of lead bullets.
Right.
I think that really is what it comes down to. Before we found Close, we were struggling. We were trying to do anything we could. We knew Qualtrics because it's a company that's close by here. A lot of our company came from there as well. So we were familiar with the survey approach, and it really is a great company, but there's so much more to that. So whereas that was our first step, it was being curious. How can we take that next step? What is a hypothesis that we can prove in a different way? What is the next approach? How can we benefit the most people? I think having that strategic curiosity is also just one step at least towards that getting shit done.
Yeah. One thing that kind of stuck out to me too is you have to think about this too from a win-loss standpoint. There will be a tendency to focus on the things that are wrong, right? Like this went wrong. Don't do that. Don't only focus on the things that went wrong. Okay. Like make sure win-loss is a great way to highlight the things that are going right.
Right.
It's a great way to spotlight, like, look, this sales rep won this deal, but not based off of what they're saying, based off what the buyer said, and to put them up on a pedestal and to give them credit. If you use win-loss as a way to give teams credit, you will get buy-in, and that's huge. And it actually is really good for your culture.
Yeah.
It's really like we're winning together as a team. And then the other thing that I thought as you were talking is you also should be thinking about it from how do you, as a sales rep, if you're doing this and helping me win, right? It's not just like, oh yeah, they're going to like, if help enable me, right? Like you have a deal against competitor X. Here's all of the feedback we have against competitor X, right? Like these are the last 5 deals we've won, the last 5 deals we've lost. Like these are the sales reps that were on those deals. rather than like them going to Slack or some whatever message board and be like, hey, who's gone up against competitor X? Can you guys tell me something? Like that
Yeah.
sucks for a sales rep. Like
Right.
it's like you're walking around with your hat in your hand asking for donations instead of like as a product marketing team and as a like truly enabling the sales team. Hey, every time there's a deal against these guys, this is where we have the information that is powerful and palpable and easy for you to digest and act on. So I think a huge part of it is focus on the good stuff too.
Yeah.
And use even the good and the bad stuff to help a sales rep that's like, this Ethan's out to help me hit my quota. I freaking love Ethan.
Ethan's my guy.
Like, because sales reps they want to go hit quota, right?
Right.
Like so the more you help them, the more that they're going to sponsor it and appreciate it as an effort instead of be resistant to it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect, really. And we're about out of time. So Ethan, I just want to ask you if there any parting wisdom you want to say before we wrap it up.
I don't know about wisdom, but if I had to give any advice to someone who's maybe going through this for the first time, I'm not sure exactly where everyone's at in their journey. But I would definitely say, be strategic and recognize the value, exactly what Spencer and Bailey have both said, the value that can come from win-loss. I just think there's such a high benefit to using this to also elevate not only your career, but just where PMM fits in your organization for people behind you. We're talking about trailblazers. Like this is, in my opinion, how you can really blaze trails for not just yourself, but for future PMMs who are coming in and just really kind of staking your claim for this is where PMMs sit at the table. It is that strategic direction. It's that strategic storytelling. It's saying, where should we be going? Where should we be looking?
Yeah.
What is our product vision? Like where are we missing, or where are we getting an easy dunk or something?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like the point of the session is why this should be a priority. It's hard to find another initiative in an organization that is more closely tied to revenue than win-loss.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why do we win and lose? And how do we go win more? Is like, honestly, the heart of almost any company.
Right.
Right. So that's why it's valuable for a product marketer, is because if you can be instrumental in helping your company win more, the credit will come behind you. You won't have to go seek it. Right. The credit will come behind you because, wow, the product marketing team has really helped drive these initiatives for us. And you don't want to be the guy in your organization that is trying to get credit for everything you do. Those people are cancerous culturally.
Yep.
You want to be the person that people look at and say, I couldn't do my job without that person. And if you become that person in your organization, it's impossible to not get recognized.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with everything you guys said. Thanks so much for having this conversation. I think this has been really awesome. I hope it's been really eye-opening and helpful for all of you PMAers that are watching. So Rose, we'll turn the time back over to you.
Yeah, we may have gotten some questions. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of questions I'd just love to put to you all. So firstly, I know you were touching on this just before, but we have a question that's asking, often sales execs just list price as the reason for loss. How do you encourage them to log real info of value?
You want me to take that?
Yeah, you go.
So I used to work in rev ops, sales ops. So I know that sales reps don't actually like to fill stuff out in their CRM. So the first rule I would tell you is be very mindful of what you actually are asking them to fill out, how cumbersome it is to fill out, and think really hard about what you're putting in there in terms of what you want them to actually do in closing out a deal. My advice to almost anybody would be, you want to collect less, not more, from sales reps. And the reason why is, A, you want your sales reps selling. You don't want them filling out reports. And B, the more they fill out, the more likely you are to get speculative feedback, right? The second part of the answer is reps actually don't know, right? They didn't make the decision. The decision was made by the buyer. And so if I was doing this, I would be thinking much more about how do I go to the buyer to get feedback from the buyer? And that's not a knock on the sales reps. Buyers don't always tell the sales reps, right? The buyers won't always tell a sales rep what they're thinking. This is a little bit of a poker game. But also the buyers might lie to the sales rep and say it was price when the reality is it was the sales rep, or the sales rep will just guess and say that it's price. Does that make sense? So I would think about it very much this way. Reps are a good source of initial information, but very dangerous to base any big win-loss initiatives coming out of win-loss solely off of what sales reps are saying. You need to go to the buyers.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Our analysis was exactly that. When we did our aggregate, before we started doing like a real win-loss, it was 100% of the time price and timing. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like,
Right.
There's no way it's always this.
Right. Well, and price doesn't, even if it is price, what does that even mean?
It's the lowest hanging.
Price means
Right.
nothing, right? Because price could mean there's a value component to it. It could mean there's a pricing model issue to it. It could mean the way it's communicated is messed up. So that's not even really actionable either. So that's where I go back to that first point of be careful what you're even asking them to give you and how you ask it, because you might be setting yourself up to waste a bunch of their time and then get feedback that you can't do anything with anyways, right? So be really smart how you engage reps. And there's a lot of stuff on our blog that we've written about that might be helpful. I know PMA has some stuff as well that you guys can go engage with, but that's a big thing to me is like, if you're gonna take a sales rep down from prospecting and selling, it better be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Another question we had in regards to small or startup companies beginning a win-loss program. Would you say there's a certain amount of customers or company size that you would have to surpass before running a win-loss analysis is worthwhile?
Yeah, I can take that.
It feels like that's right up
as
your
a guy
alley.
who did the win-loss startup, like we started getting feedback on our deals when we were still, a 4-person organization, right? So I don't think there's ever a time where it does or doesn't make sense. But I will say this, it becomes more and more important to a company to do win-loss as the company scales and grows, because, when you're a startup, if I'm the founder and also the sales rep and also the product person, and I'm on every single sales call, like I probably have a better understanding of what's happening on the front line and how buyers are reacting to me than if I have, 6 layers of the organization between me and that call. And so that's one reason why the bigger you get, the more valuable it becomes, because you need to harness and get that whole gap of your organization, top layer all the way down to the front line, everybody harnessed around what are the initiatives and where to go. And win-loss is a great way to do that. The bigger question I would ask back to the person who posed this is, what do your deals look like, right? Are they very transactional and very simple? Are they a little more sophisticated? Are your deal cycles longer? You can start doing this on your own through a little bit and try to use internal resources. There's different ways to approach it, but I don't think any time is too soon to start. You should consider how you start based off of the composition of your pipeline. If you're a very fast transactional business, actually you might want to think about analyzing the deals that are going through the business before you even go talk to anybody, because you might actually realize, hey, there's an entire pocket or industry or group that they're completely out of our strike zone. We're not even coming close to selling to them. So let's not even go figure out why. Like as a startup, you got to just be super aggressive on finding product market fit. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think the biggest answer is start sooner than later, because you'll find value in it, but also be careful to not necessarily over-index too much on formalizing and building something really robust, because as a startup, you're going to move and change very quickly. Most of the companies that are engaging a third party like Closed are typically like $10 million in revenue plus. So they're starting to get big enough to where they want to get more of that frontline insight. They have enough traffic going through their pipeline to where it makes sense for them to engage a third party. Like our clients include companies like Microsoft and Adobe and SAP and Salesforce, but we also, a lot of our clients are what I would call like mid-market, kind of moving out of the SMB. Tech companies are trying to scale very quickly, and they're looking for solutions that can help them do that.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Awesome. I'm conscious of the time, but I do want to squeeze in one last question. So we have someone who's an aspiring product marketer, hoping to undertake a summer internship or new job soon. And in regards to win-loss, how can they look to make a real impact in their first kind of 90 or 120 days?
It's a great question. Again, we talked about setting expectations, but I think just coming in there with an understanding of its importance, and also maybe even being able to articulate it. I know previously we were talking about the sales team and making sure we're all on the same page as we're trying to establish a culture. One of the things that I've tried to really communicate is that we're trying to gain the clarity to sprint. Because I think one of the challenges you have is if you're running somewhere but you don't know where you're going, it's really hard to fully commit to it, because you're like, well, I could run 2 miles in the wrong direction, then I have to run all the way back and then correct to where I actually want to go. But if you know that you're going from A to B, like, you're willing to just go as fast as you can to get there because you have that confidence. And so if an intern is able to come in and say like, hey, I think this is really, really important. Maybe these are some of the things that we could do to help. This is what I think I could do to help you and you and you. And now you can go to very specific departments and say, this is the value that I can bring to you in these first 90 days. Would that be valuable to you? Now it's less of a question of like, what can I do to help? It's more of a, hey, how can I get this done for you to help you? I think people would be like, heck yeah, like I would love to have that help.
Yeah.
If I got hired as a consultant, maybe this is one way to answer the question, because an intern's kind of like a consultant, like this is a temporary thing, come in. If I was hired as a consultant, I would go and I would do almost like a diagnostic of what are we doing for win-loss, what have we been doing, and come up with and then versus what does best practice look like for a company like ours. And you're not going to, and try to get it started by the end, right? Because I think within a 2 to 3 month period, you could come in and you could diagnose, here's our win rate, here's how it's changing, this is how where it's stronger or weaker across different pockets of our business, and then be able to say, this is what we're doing to capture win-loss feedback or what we're not doing. And these are some things that I would suggest that we launch. That's something that you could totally do in 2 to 3 months and come with a really strong recommendation for how you would do it in an ongoing way. And I think, and if they are doing it, then maybe you can identify ways to tweak it or improve it. But I would think about it very much from how your ultimate goal is to say, this is where we're at, and this is what good looks like. The crazy thing about win-loss is it's a very quick moving space. The analog I would give you guys is it's like 10 years ago, companies hired little boutique consulting firms to do NPS surveys, right? And now companies just have all this automated stuff to go collect NPS, right? That's what's happening to win-loss, right? Win-loss is going from a few years ago, companies would just hire like an outsourced, person or small boutique firm to do win-loss interviews on their behalf, and then they would do some stuff in their CRM, and then they would do some other stuff, and then they would pull it all together into a PowerPoint presentation and do a quarterly business review to talk about it. But it wasn't like actually part of how you ran your business. That's changing. It's now becoming part of how you run your business. So capturing that vision of like, this is what good actually looks like, and then figuring out where you're at on the journey to get there and making the recommendation for how to get there is kind of how I would think about approaching it. Because I think in doing that, you'll be able to really open some people's eyes of the value that it can bring.
I love that. And last plug with that, whoever asked that question, I would bet money. There's a book, Indispensable by Monday, but if you were able to go into any company and to set up a process like that and to add that value, I would be shocked if they didn't offer you a job at the very end, because that is such a high value. I mean, at that point, they can't afford to get rid of you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some great advice there. I just want to thank all of you again for sharing all your thoughts and wisdom and for joining us. And everyone, do stay tuned as we are launching right into the next panel discussion now. So thanks, Spencer, Ethan, and Bailey.
Thanks everyone. Have a good one.
Hi everyone, we hope you're enjoying Product Marketing Trailblazers so far. Just before we jump into the next session, I want to share some info on a very exciting project we have been working on here at PMA. As you know, here at PMA, we are dedicated to elevating the role of product marketing. But as the function grows, we have been focusing on how to develop the best product marketing leaders for now and the near future. So, if you're harboring hopes of becoming a product marketing C-suiter, this is for you. Equip yourself with essential knowledge and skills with PMA's fellowship program, our 8-week interactive course taking place from January 17th. Built alongside director and VP level PMMs from distinguished brands such as Amazon Web Services, LinkedIn, and Uber, the program is packed with over 40 hours of education that'll help you learn, share, and enhance your credentials. Join experienced leaders from the likes of Shopify, Gong, and Airslate as they share indispensable knowledge on the topics needed to flourish in a leadership role. From scaling teams, data, budgets, to strategies, project management, and influence. Gain unprecedented access to tried and tested tactics, strategies, and methodologies that'll help you build an exemplary strategy. Plus an exclusive fellowship alumni, 14 templates and frameworks, live weekly workshops, and actionable coursework. Enroll today at pmmalliance.co/fellowship and take the first step towards becoming a C-suiter of tomorrow. But for now, we're headed on back over to Product Marketing Trailblazers.
Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about when you are first building up product marketing from the ground up. I've got a great panel with me today. My name is Jackie Palmer. I am the VP of Product Marketing at Demandbase, and I'm joined by 3 lovely women today to talk about building product marketing and looking at all the tools and processes and people involved in setting up that product marketing function when you are either the first or the first one to really sort of build it up within the organization. So I got my start in product marketing from product management, actually, came over into from the dark side about a long time ago. I won't even say how long because then that dates me, but it's been a great journey. I've been able to build product marketing teams from nothing, also came, flat into product marketing teams that were already heavy functioning and well-oiled machines. So I've had a bunch of experience both on the building side and on the making sure everybody is doing their best and performing at their most side. So that's a little bit about me. Let's move on to Katie. Maybe why don't you get started?
Thanks, Jackie. I am Katie Moss, currently Senior Product Marketing Manager at Pay Near Me, which is a fintech company out of California. I started out actually in content marketing for 7 or 8 years. I was in content and made the switch to product marketing about 4 or 5 years ago now. Within that time, I've been able to build up the product marketing function from basically 0 at 2 organizations. So this is a very close topic to my heart, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Awesome. Thank you. How about we move to Laura? You want to introduce yourself next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Sanchez. I am a director of product marketing at CenturyReach, which is a healthcare IT software solution. I have a very broad background. I've been in the telecommunications industry doing B2C and doing customer marketing. I've done a little bit of product marketing, product management as well, like you, Jackie, and I'm very passionate about, the product experience and building valuable products and the UI experience. And then, most recently over the last 4 years, really building that product marketing function from the ground up and taking all of the knowledge across the board that I've gained through, years of experience in customer marketing, telecommunications, SaaS, and building a high productive product marketing team. So very excited to be with you today and sharing some of these insights with other product marketing people so that we can continue to advocate for this function.
Perfect. Awesome. And let's round out with Priyanka.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. So I'm Priyanka. I lead product and channel marketing or partner marketing, we call it at Qualia. And Qualia is a company that makes home buying a more simple, secure, and enjoyable experience via a variety of products. I've been at Qualia for about a year. And prior to this, I actually was at a company called Gainsight for several years where I was leading product marketing for various products. And actually, my journey is a little bit strange because I actually started in management consulting. So I was at a company called Bain for 3 years prior to business school. I've spent my entire career in tech. But after business school, I was doing go-to-market work at Twitter, and then I moved over to Gainsight, and I was actually doing business operations. And actually, in my first year of business operations, a lot of the work that I was doing ended up being about product positioning and messaging. And so there was sort of a natural fit over into product marketing, and that's kind of how I transitioned over. And I really enjoy it. It's a lot of storytelling. It's a lot of go-to-market strategy, particularly at Qualia. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be here and share a little bit more about kind of how we built out the function at Qualia.
Excellent. Well, one of the things I love to hear all of your different backgrounds, because that's the best part about product marketing, is that so many different departments touch it, that you can come to it from a variety of different backgrounds and spaces and ways, and all of the things that you all ladies were talking about bring so much to the function, so you've got the customer marketing, you've got the business operations, you've got all the different things that you can bring to it, which makes for a more robust and more diverse product marketing function. So let's get started and talk a little bit about when you are starting out and you're building up, let's, say from the ground up, what are the top 3 objectives that every new product marketing leader must sort of focus on and set out to accomplish in the first couple of months that they're out there? Katie, let's go back and start with you again. And obviously we can all chime in, but let's start with Katie. Say, what are the top 3 objectives that you think that you would start with to get going with product marketing?
Yeah, I think the 3 most important things are understanding the business that you're working in, the market that you're working in, which includes the competitive landscape, and then also understanding your customers and kind of all the activities and projects that go around that the first few months. So that may be making sure that you have competitive analysis in place, you've done persona research, you're really talking to people within the market and understanding the business. One of the greatest things about product marketing is bringing in that data and that value. And so I think you really need a strong foundation from the beginning and understanding of all of those things.
How do you get that though, when you're sort of just starting out? What ways do you look at to get that market research? What are the things that you would start with there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work you can do yourself through industry publications, through events and webinars and all of those things, but that can only get you so far as well. Like, you really need to be talking to subject matter experts in the field, and those can be experts within your company, which happens a lot. It can also be people that you work with, industry analysts and others like that. So just really getting in front of those people, asking the right questions and making sure that you have that good base is super important, I think.
Excellent. So Priyanka, Laura, anything to add on? Katie mentioned competitive analysis, market research, customer research, anything that you would add on to sort of the first top 3 objectives for getting product marketing started?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but I think also building relationships throughout the company with other folks is really, really critical. I know we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And then the other piece that I always encourage folks on my team to really get a lot of expertise in early is the product. At Qualia, we actually have a really, really complex product. It can actually be very overwhelming. We have multiple products. They all sort of work and speak together. And I think, spending a lot of time with the product up front gives you a lot of confidence, right? To then go out and, understand the market better, understand your buyer a little bit better, what their pain points are. And so I always encourage people to really dig in with the product, spend a lot of time with the PMs, really make sure they can understand it to the point where they can demo it. And then go out into the market and, be having those conversations and asking those questions.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I've never met a product marketer that was successful that couldn't demo at least a bit of their own product, right? Like, could you at least give that elevator pitch and that 5-minute demo? And I think if you can't even do that, then you're kind of stuck, right? Laura,
Absolutely.
What about you?
I totally agree with that. I've always said knowledge is power. So when you really, understand your product and you can tell that story and you can put yourself in the shoes of your customers to see how that experience really drives on that value proposition that you're trying to deliver upon, I think is very powerful. And it gives you the ability to also connect better, both on the product management side of the house, as well as on the sales side, on the customer success side, so that they know that you understand what you're talking about and the reasoning behind some of the messaging and positioning that you're coming back with to really, resonate on that value.
Yeah, you mentioned the customers and Katie did too. And I think that's really important because, when either customers or prospects, or ideally both, to do those interviews early on to get that, sort of what are they wanting? What are they asking for? How do they talk about their business? I think that's really important as well. Good. So let me see. What about, how when you're dropped into an organization and you're just getting started, what are some of the ways that you can gain the trust of others who might not be as familiar with the product marketing role, and then it essentially show that value and say, hey, look, product marketing is going to help you out, right? Laura, since we sort of just ended with you, why don't we start with you now?
Absolutely. I think going back to what Priyanka was saying, building those relationships, I think is extremely critical for you to advocate for the function itself and help those other key team members understand what the value of the product marketing function is, what they can expect from you, what are the things that you're going to help them with to make their day-to-day easier, to make their, win more deals, to make them, have a better story with their customers, to improve and to increase cross-sells. So I think it is very critical to build those relationships on that front. And also, again, on the product management side of the house, because obviously there's this, sometimes there's this push and pull in terms of the roles and responsibilities and what we're supposed to be doing versus what they're supposed to be doing. So really, building those relationships and starting to frame out the value that you bring to the table for them, so they don't need to worry about the market research. They don't need to worry about the competitive landscape. You build a framework for them and you're delivering that to them for them to be able to execute on their product roadmap and for them to be able to execute on the different features and functionality that they need to bring into the product because of the voice of the customer that we're bringing to the table for them.
Right. I'll bring up, before we move on to let others chime in, but I'll bring up the age-old question of where should product marketing sit? And I think you're right, because that relationship with product is so important that when you're starting out in product marketing, whether you sit in product, in marketing, in sales, or wherever you sit, that relationship with the product team is so important, so tight, that you need to be able to build that up. I think that's a really important one to start with.
Yeah.
What about some of the other? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
No, I was going to say, in terms of where should product marketing sit? Like when I started at CentralReach, I was sitting under the product organization. And then shortly after, I moved into marketing. In my opinion, I feel like product marketing is better suited to sit under the marketing organization. I don't know what you ladies think about that. I think it gives us the ability to be a little bit more unbiased, to be able to analyze things from a different perspective in order to, again, bring all that value across the board to all the stakeholders in a way that is more effective. That's my personal thought there.
Okay, good. I've gone back and forth. I change my mind every time I do it, basically. I want to be closer to product. I think that it's harder to potentially build the relationships with product as it is to build the relationships with marketing. But I agree with you. I think it's also good to be outside of product and bring that outside edge. So let's go back to sort of gaining the trust and bringing that immediate value. Priyanka, Katie, anything to add to this question before we tackle one of the other ones?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that the relationship with the product team, product managers is the most important. That's been the one that I've focused on the most. And just because it's also can be a little tricky, right? Just as Laura mentioned, there are some overlapping functions for both of those roles. And if you're barreling in as product marketing and they're not used to working with product marketing, it's a new function. You definitely have to spend some time like proving your value and where you can help them out versus like, I'm taking over, this is what I'm going to do, so I think really just working with them to gain their trust and bringing that value at the very beginning is super important.
How about the relationship with sales? I don't know, Priyanka, do you want to touch on that one, or do you want to add more to the other relationships? I think you've got to sort of build both sides, right? I always talk about the best friends being product management on one hand and sales on the other hand. Priyanka, anything to add to that one or other departments?
Yeah, I mean, actually, my approach with even both sales and product is really similar in that I actually kind of apply the approach that I asked for my team to apply with customers, which is, when you're when you get into a meeting with a customer, really listening to their pain points, right? Listening to their problems, listening to what their challenges are, right? Like really applying that product marketing skill set internally to your cross-functional partners. And, in the beginning here, just for us, really listening to the different sales leaders and their teams, right? And actually sitting down with them and understanding what are the challenges that you're facing in the market today, selling whatever product you're selling, and kind of getting that insight. And you learn a ton, but you also build, I think when you listen to people, you build a lot of trust, right? Because you actually are signaling that you're open to understanding what their challenges are and that you're actually looking for overlap, right? So you're looking for overlap between what their challenges are and what we can actually do to provide unique value. And so, what we learned a lot in working with sales and product, understanding their challenges is sort of expressing, okay, well, this is the way in which product marketing can help, right? And this is what we can do for you. And, from the perspective of sales, a lot of times maybe it's the creation of certain pieces of content, right? Maybe certain messaging things that we need to change, right? In the case of product, actually, what we found is that in many ways, because we're talking to customers so much, we can either broker some conversations that they might not have had before, or we can actually proactively suggest. I actually just had a product marketer come to me the other day, proactively suggesting something that we build in one of our products based on a conversation she had with a customer and some ideas that it's sort of been percolating. And that's super, I mean, when I see that happening, when you're actually coming back and proactively suggesting to product ideas for things to build, and here's a TAM analysis that I did to show you, why this could be so important. I think that's sort of the pinnacle in my mind of what the team can do, particularly in product-driven organizations.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that I usually try to do is make the rounds of all of the departments, just like you said, do that listening tour. I think that's important. What about anybody, sort of really key in on customer success as a key department? I think that's one that I've been looking at as an up and coming department that for product marketing to really pay more attention to, especially as we move more to a product-led growth and you're trying to really grow through the customers in many ways. Any experiences with reaching out to customer success?
Yeah, actually, I'll jump in here because this was sort of, I was thinking about it in terms of kind of the next question or the next area that I think we're going to go to. I think customer success was actually one of the first teams that I interacted with. And at Qualia, they own quite a lot. So I think it can depend on sort of the organization and what they own. And at Qualia, they own retention, they own the renewal, they also own expansion, right? So, the more that they're sort of owning additional kind of revenue generating aspects of the business, I think it's particularly important. they're very interested, obviously, in driving adoption of the product such that it drives retention, right? And I think from that perspective, we can be super helpful. But the more sort of direct line into revenue, especially, we've helped a lot, obviously, with marketing expansion products and things like that. And that sits under customer success. So we've been able to understand what are their challenges when it comes to marketing, or sorry, when it comes to selling these expansion products. And also when it comes to the renewal itself, right, of existing products, and where can product marketing really directly help with that.
Excellent. Anyone else want to add in on that?
I can chime in. Yeah, for us, customer success is a critical component, like building on the customer experience and ensuring that we as product marketers are providing them the right set of tools and resources for them to be able to talk about our products, ensure that their customers are understanding the value that the products bring to the table, and any type of technical documentation that is needed, again, to streamline the workflows and to streamline the use of the product. Our customer success team is amazing in terms of the knowledge, like they are constantly talking to their customers. So they're a great source of information for us in order to be able to understand where the customer is in this journey and what are the different touch points and how can we help them and help with the customer experience and support customer marketing with the different campaigns and things that they're doing on their end. So from my experience, yes, absolutely. That is another critical kind of like function that we need to be very close with, and that will enable us as product marketers to work very closely also with customer marketing in order to develop, the right communication and the right materials for the teams.
Perfect.
Yeah,
so
I would agree with, oh, sorry, Lori. Sorry, Jackie. I would agree with all of that as well. I mean, I've definitely found both customer success and sales to be the best sort of resources for understanding the customer, especially as I've been a one-woman band, and so I can't always get to as many customer calls as I want, but I can listen to Gong, I can talk to the salespeople, I can talk to customer success more often. And so a lot of times I'm really gleaning a lot of that knowledge from them, and then also sort of working with them on best practices like Laura was talking about. So yeah.
Excellent. So I think we've covered a bunch of the next question already, actually, which roles and functions are sort of more important to connect with first. Let's talk about how we establish some of those cross-functional relationships. So what are some of the ways to do that? I think we talked a little bit about a listening tour. Are there other things that you folks have done to really establish those relationships with sales, product, customer success? What about any other departments too? I've also found, because when I've been a product marketer and led product marketing teams, oftentimes I own pricing. I've found that working with the finance and the legal department, unfortunately, is actually a really critical part of your role as well. I say that unfortunately, probably in the wrong sense. I do love all of that, but it's just like, it's not, it doesn't seem from the outstart that it's the same kind of thing that you want to get to from the mind of the customer, but it is so important to really make those finance and legal connections as well. So what are some ways that all of you have made connections cross-functionally, and what are some of the ways that people starting out could do that besides just a listening tour kind of thing? Anyone, Priyanka, want to start? Or
yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned legal, in our business, and it's probably different by different businesses, but in our business, being in real estate, there's actually a lot of legal considerations that we have to keep in mind. And so we have quite a robust kind of legal team at Qualia, a really fantastic general counsel. And so we've established great relationships with that team. We have, some dedicated folks on that team that help us. And, we've built that relationship certainly over time. We've had them come in and do trainings for our team on a regular basis. And, we've generated, I think, a really good comfort with my team of just being able to reach out with questions at any time. And I think that's been really fantastic. And it differs, right, by organization. Right. You mentioned the finance team. Pricing, actually, we, so far hasn't really sat with us. It's been more of a finance thing, but it's obviously a really important, there's a lot of ways in which, it's impacted our ability to position and message things in a certain way, right? So you want to be able to have a really good relationship and build trust and show that you have a point of view on it. And so, I very early on built relationships and really just tried to understand. I mean, we talked about the listening tour, but I can't emphasize it enough. really tried to understand, why is it that we priced our products the way that we did from the beginning, even if I didn't have an opinion on how I think it should be done, or even if I didn't want to put my opinion forth or whatever, just understanding the strategy behind how we did it, why we did it in the first place, so that I think later on, if we want to revisit something, I have that context. And so, I can't say that enough, but we do a lot of listening. And then, I certainly have my team, not just after establishing relationships, but also just on an ongoing basis. We have regular touch points with these teams, right? So we have regular touch points with product, we have regular touch points with sales, and we do a lot of sharing of what we're building, right? So what the vision is in terms of the next 3 to 6 months in product marketing, the launches that we have coming up, how it's going to impact your team, what we're doing for you. And I think in the beginning, it was a lot of listening, and then call it 6 to 9 months in, it was a lot of here's what we're delivering, right? And give me feedback on it.
Yeah, I think that's important. And one of the things that I've sort of fallen into over the times that I've started up product marketing is, I think either a newsletter or a consistent touch point with a broader set of people, because you're, like you said, you're often doing one-on-ones with some of the leaders, but you're maybe not touching on a daily or weekly or monthly basis all of the rest of the teams. And so I think it's important to do either a visiting tour once a month, you go do something to their team meetings, or more frequently as well, or even a newsletter site kind of thing, or even a Slack message saying, hey, here's what's product marketing is working on, right? And getting feedback as well in that, what are you missing? What are you doing that we can do better?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jackie.
Add on that?
Yeah, one of the things that we do here, and we've done it ever since the beginning when I, started running point on all things product marketing, we have a task force for each of our key initiatives, in which, at the beginning, we're meeting as a team with all of these cross-functional leaders, right, and stakeholders across the organization. Perhaps at the beginning is weekly, then it becomes a bi-weekly, then it becomes a monthly, in order to ensure that all of this information and all of these initiatives that we're working together on, whether it's the pricing and packaging, the way that we're launching the campaigns that we're going to put together, everything, the support team, the sales team, the positioning and messaging, the customer success team, all of these different teams need to have the right information for us to go to market, right? So through this session, we bring everybody together and we're able to share all this insight, share all of the information that is relevant to all of these stakeholders in order for us to get everybody aligned and on the same page. And that has been extremely helpful for us when it comes to our go-to-market plans and ensuring that, we have the right stakeholders for each of these initiatives that we're doing. And again, from a pricing and packaging perspective, business operations is also one of those other key departments, because even when you develop that pricing and packaging, which in our organization, there's a variety of stakeholders involved for whatever reason, even from the CEO, down to, the sales executives and the marketing executives and so on and so forth. But when it comes to executing on that pricing and the reason for that pricing, that's where that collaboration with the business operations team to ensure that everything can be set up correctly and that we roll it out to the sales team successfully becomes really critical. But some of these meetings and Slack messages and stuff that you were mentioning are really helpful for us.
Yeah.
I think being in smaller organizations, I think two groups that I've worked with really closely, pretty consistently, have been demand generation and sales operations. Beyond just pricing, have worked on things like that as well, but especially setting up analytics with sales operations. So when you're in kind of a high growth company, there may not be sort of that baseline in place. And so being able to work really closely with sales ops has been super helpful for me in that way. Also demand generation, they have a great understanding of the external content and what works for our audience. And then from product marketing perspective, being able to bring in even more of that market research analysis, the customer research and analysis, the product information and what's going on with the product, and really help inform those campaigns has been a huge part of both my roles in product marketing.
It's a really good point. One that I realized as we've been talking, we didn't mention marketing that much. Yeah. So let's dive into that. I think one of the reasons maybe we didn't mention marketing that much is when you're just starting up a product marketing function, the marketing team may also be just starting up. Is that one of the reasons why we may not have mentioned marketing as much? Ladies, what do you think?
From my perspective, the marketing teams were already set up in both of the instances, both the companies I worked for product marketing. So I think that was a little backwards probably. So maybe others have more information there.
Laura, Priyanka, anything from your perspective on whether marketing was built out or also just getting started when product marketing was just getting started?
Yeah, I can go first, Priyanka. Yeah, on my end, I was one of the I was the second in the marketing team, followed by even like the leadership that came in from a marketing perspective, and then demand generation was kind of like the third or fourth. So building that relationship, also, I sound like a broken record. Extremely important. Like I learned very, very fast how we need to be very connected to one another. And there another of those kind of like internal customers that we have, right? Because demand generation needs a lot of our messaging, needs content, needs a lot of the things that we need to provide them in order for them to go and be able to execute and start generating that demand. So having that collaboration was extremely critical for us to begin with as we both started developing our functions and creating that marketing machine.
And you're kind of creating it together, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so at Qualia, we definitely had all those, we had demand gen and field, built out already. And we had a small product marketing team as well when I joined. And obviously there is a really, tight connection there. Every single one of our business units, our audiences, we have both a product marketer and a demand gen manager on it, right? And the product marketer really kind of owning almost like from a GM kind of from a marketing perspective, really owning that audience and really understanding, okay, what's going to really resonate with them, understanding that audience very deeply, and then coming up with ideas for offers, both from a product perspective, as well as just general ideas on types of content that will really resonate with them, and working closely with the demand gen manager to develop a program for that audience that, will resonate over the next, call it like 6 to 9 months. So I think that's really critical. I think it's just interesting because I think as product marketers, we're often seen as the glue that sort of holds many different teams together. And so we often probably
I call it the octopus, right?
Yeah.
With all of the different legs, 8 different legs at least, feeling out to all the other groups.
Exactly. And I think when I joined, really we didn't have as close of a connection with product. We didn't have as close of a connection with sales. We didn't have as close a connection with some of these other sort of customer success, certainly some of these other cross-functional teams. And so I think product marketing has a really unique role in that. And I think that's probably why we talk so much about it, but definitely other teams in marketing are extremely important, obviously.
So that's great. Let me go back to one thing that Katie said. And I think this is an interesting point, which is, Katie, you got kind of dropped in to build product marketing where there was already some established, marketing structures and other structures. So how do you sort of make that decision as to what kind of changes you might need to start product marketing up and fit in or bring them along on your change journey to make sure that you're not ruffling feathers where established routines might already be in place? Any thoughts on dropping product marketing into an already more established team or structure?
Yeah. So I think there are always going to be a few feathers ruffled, and that's okay, but we just don't want to go too far because product marketing is typically brought in to really make changes in the organization. They see there's a need and there are gaps that need to be filled, and there will always be a little bit of friction there, but need to try to minimize that as much as possible. So what I've done in both of my roles when I first start is to do a product marketing gap analysis. I use a tool that I've created that looks at how are we doing today in certain areas where product marketing may own this or may touch this. How important is this to the business? And what does this mean to each of the stakeholders? So I'm asking 5, 6, 7 major stakeholders across sales, customer success, marketing, et cetera, that really feed into these different areas for example, how are we doing on competitive analysis today? And how important is it to you? And not only that, but who owns it today and who should own it? And so with getting in all those different answers from the stakeholders in the first few weeks, and then kind of combining them and seeing where the commonalities are, I've been able to distill that down into 3 or 4 major kind of goals to go after in the first few months to plug in those gaps. Because once I sort of present all this information to the stakeholders, they say, okay, well, that's important to me, but it looks like everyone else thinks this thing is really important. And so it is really important that product marketing goes and works on this. Otherwise, in those established structures, like people have their pet projects, they have things they think are most important and will get done at some point, but like, what is product marketing going to focus on at the beginning, and getting agreement on what product marketing should own, because typically it's distributed across a bunch of different teams before product marketing comes in. So that's been really super helpful for me.
I like that approach of the gap analysis. Laura, Priyanka, have you, either of you, also done that approach or taken a different approach to dropping product marketing in on maybe established departments or processes or things like that?
Yeah, one process that we identified where there was a significant gap was actually our release management process with product, right? So when we actually released product, we were releasing product into the product, new features in the product without communicating, internally to different teams, right? So you could imagine customer success had no idea that sometimes some things would appear in the product, right? Marketing might not know, all kinds of.
It's a common refrain I find at all the companies I go to as well.
And actually the worst part is that the customers oftentimes would not know when something really valuable hit the product. And so that was a really, honestly, from kind of month one, was something that was, brought to my attention as a huge gap, and really something that we wanted to help fill. And I think could show a lot of leadership from a product marketing perspective to help fill that. And so we, alongside product, really developed a new release management process by which all these different teams, success, marketing, sales, could understand, when something was hitting the product and feel ensured that our customers knew about that. And then also for us to be able to figure out, okay, there's so much that's hitting the product. We have a really prolific product and eng team. There's so much that's hitting the product. What of this is something that's really worth marketing and, building a narrative around, versus stuff that can just go into the product and we can just do some education around. And so that getting that organization was, with the release management process was really important to scale. And again, a place where I think product marketing could show a lot of leadership on behalf of marketing for the broader.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a really, really important one to sort of put some structure around, and then it essentially level sets all of the departments, right? So that you have a better place to go from there, both for the value of the benefit of the customer, but also the benefit of the internal teams as well. Laura, thoughts for you?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Priyanka. The other thing that I think, once you do that gap analysis that Katie was mentioning, I think it's also important to identify kind of like the state of the state, right? So going back to competitive intelligence, for example, they may be doing something today, right? But is it really the best that it could possibly be? And what would we as product marketers do differently, right? And why would they benefit from us doing it versus whomever is doing it today, by consolidating the information more accurately, or having it in a different format, or doing a partnership with a competitive intelligence tool like the Clues of the world and all of these other tools that are out there, because then we can show them the additional value that we bring to the table, and therefore we should have a more kind of like receptive approach from their perspective in terms of like, yeah, sure, take it from here, because you're going to give me more than what I'm able to achieve today. And that applies, I think, for a lot of other things, again, when you're building the structure from the ground up. And I think the other additional thing that I would add is also advocating from the top down, because I think that if you have the support also from executive management in terms of the value that we bring to the table, and they can also advocate for that across the organization, then probably people are going to be more receptive to, giving us the opportunity to chime in and deliver upon this value.
Yeah. You brought up something that I think is a good segue to our next topic, which is content. So you brought up the competitive content. Is there a better format? Is there a better thing that we could deliver to help the whole organization. What other pieces of content do you think are important to start out with besides potentially competitive battle cards or competitive intel sheets, whatever we want to call them? Laura, what do you think on content?
Yeah, so I guess, when I started and I did that initial evaluation of the organization and where we were at, some of the things that came up, through that research was buyer journey. Like, what is the buyer journey? Can you please, Laura, do research and document the buyer journey? The battle cards, so that they have one single source of truth of information that they can enable them to win and win faster. Again, the competitive intelligence was something that took us a little bit of time, because to be honest with you, when you're the only one running the show, and you don't have a clue and you don't have some of these tools, you really have to go in and search for all of this information yourself. So it actually took us some time to gather the information. And even to this day, we have it on slide decks, all as well organized as possible. And then from a content management perspective, we started organizing the way that we had all of our content enablement in one single, presentation, in which everything was organized by product, by segment, the best possible way that we could do. Because back then, again, we were just starting from scratch. As you start scaling the function, then I think there's the opportunity to identify what are these key systems that you can use in order to take that to the next level. So one of the things that we've done recently is we implemented HighSpot, and now we have a complete repository of extremely organized resources from, for all the segments, for all the stages of the buyer journey. And I am a raving fan of HighSpot. If you haven't checked it out, you should definitely check it out. But in any event, I think those are some of the ones that I can think about right now, Jackie.
Great. Katie, Priyanka, any other content pieces that you would start out with?
I was in a situation, actually, luckily, where we actually had a small product marketing team when I joined. And so there was a lot of content that was built out, whether it be one pagers, there was obviously stuff on the website, et cetera. So a lot of the basic stuff was there. And actually what that gave me an opportunity to do was understand what was being used and what wasn't, right? So, yeah. And it's different, when I was at Gainsight, maybe the team would use one pagers more, right, in the sales process than they do at Qualia, right, as a random example. And so one of the things that, we had the opportunity to do is really understand, okay, should we be investing in certain pieces of content? How much are they used? How much do we think they should be used? Again, things around competitive, the way that we approached it at Gainsight and how important that is different than it is at Qualia. And it just depends on the business and what you're doing. And so it gave me an opportunity to really assess that, because the last thing that we want to do is create content that's not going to be used by the team, right?
And one of the things that I love about Laura mentioned HighSpot, I've used Seismic in the past, is it does give you that in the analytics as to what is being used. I mean, you can get that kind of from, how much people are telling you about pieces of content, but not as much as if you have the opportunity to implement one of these more content management tools where you can see the analytics right at your fingertips. So that's useful.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've been surprised, right? I've been surprised. I will move on to measurement in a second, but we look at our measurement, our analytics monthly for a monthly dashboard of what are the top things being used each month. And I've been surprised as to what things are being used. And it's changed the way that we've approached, sort of what we're creating for the next month, right?
Yep.
So.
Yes, I'm very much trying to get, I'm trying to get a content management and sales enablement tool in place for next year. So shout out to my boss if she's watching this. But I think some safe bets for when you're first starting are establishing buyer and user personas. That's really important, not only for sales and the business, but also for you to understand who you're messaging to. And also one of the first projects I typically work on is relooking at the sales deck. I find there's a lot of me, us that happens in a lot of organizations, and just being able to take that step back from product marketing and think more about challenges in the market is really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. The salespeople sometimes go straight to product features and they don't think about setting up the buyer's needs and pain points first. So that is super important. I know we're running short on time, so I want to get to one of the last questions that we'll get to, which is sort of measuring success. So once you're up and running, and maybe Priyanka, we can start with you because you sort of, I think, have a very, and Laura as well, have a very advanced sort of team now. Katie comes from a smaller company, but what are some of the ways that you're measuring success now that you're going and up and running?
You know, one of the things that our leader of our marketing team has instilled in us is developing a hypothesis for everything that we put out there in terms of like a launch or any sort of marketing program or anything like that. So, and I think it's a good forcing function to really think about, okay, what impact is this actually going to make on the business, and like actually doing the analysis on the TAM, right? So we do that for every launch or every program that we put out there. You know, what's the hypothesis in terms of the lift that we're going to get from it, in terms of additional inquiries, et cetera. And I think, so that's, I think, really important up front. And then, you know, in terms of measuring success, you know, we're getting better and better at this with our systems and tools. But yeah, we want to understand for every launch that we put out there or whatever marketing program targeted at a certain audience, how is it generated, you know, incremental lift, right? In terms of, we look particularly at the number of inquiries. So actually like hand raises to see a demo for our product. We obviously also look at kind of the influence of opportunities, and we measure that in different ways, you know, whether, especially at an enterprise level, whether it's kind of moving something down to the next sales stage, that kind of thing. And so we measure all those things, and I think that's really important. And I'll add that I think it's particularly important for product marketing because, as we know, product marketing is not like in and of itself a revenue generating function. We don't have salespeople, right, on our team that are actually going out and hitting a quota. So as much as possible, it's really important to do that kind of attribution work to be able to demonstrate the value of the function. And so I think developing that hypothesis, and then, you know, executing on a program and then measuring it in a way that is understood by the organization to be kind of the way that we want to do it, I think is really important.
Laura, what do you think?
Yeah, the way that we've been approaching it is through, we have dashboards. So we create dashboards for every single product that we launch, in which we measure our close won rates, our pipeline for new business, our pipeline for existing business, trends month over month, so that we really have that 30,000 foot overview of the performance of the individual products. And then what we also do is on a month-to-month basis, we analyze that performance, and we, you know, as the glue of the organization, we have these sessions in which we share cross-functionally where we're at, where are the numbers, what is the potential as it relates to the TAM, what are the campaigns that we're currently working on. So all the various activities that we have in place and that we're planning for in order to continue to increase the adoption and the close won rates of the products. And the same goes with close loss. So what are, you know, the close loss reasons? What are the things that are, you know, that aren't working? What are the things that we need to share back with the product team in order to, you know, have them solution for them? So looking at that as well, and looking into that data is something that is very critical for us as well.
Yeah, that's one we haven't brought up yet, but which I actually think is a real critical thing to help get started as well, is doing a win-loss analysis. Even when you're just getting started, it's useful to find out why have things been, you know, why have deals been getting lost in recent times, and what can we do to stop that? Katie, any thoughts on metrics before we move on to close?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone has said. We've been establishing monthly dashboards, Jackie, and we've talked about this. And our business as a whole is starting to really look at OKRs and how they filter down, and that goes down all the way to me. And some of those things are really data analytics driven, where we input into, you know, how many demos were requested this month. Well, I know that I worked on, you know, putting the on-demand demos together and the landing page and things like that. So we have direct influence over that. But also a lot of ours are project-based as well, because I am the only product marketing person right now. We're adding another one, but it's like, okay, what did we accomplish this quarter? So it may be things like messaging, positioning, things like that, but we do look at sort of qualitative and quantitative metrics.
Yeah, I think that's very important, both the qualitative and the quantitative as well. All right, well, let's wrap up with the sort of single piece of advice or lesson you want to leave everybody with on getting started with product marketing and really building that up from the ground up? Who wants to sort of go first? Don't all shout at once.
Yeah, I can go first. I think again, curiosity. Let's not be afraid to ask, the tough questions, cross-functionally, because that's what's going to allow us as product marketers to really, deliver value to the organization. Have those conversations, ask those questions, gather the insights for both our internal stakeholders and our customers, and consolidate the information in a way that you have actionable next steps.
Great. Priyanka, what do you think on your last piece of advice for the audience?
Yeah, I actually really love what Laura said. I was saying to someone the other day, I think what makes my most successful product marketers successful is that sense of insatiable curiosity and that sense of ownership over their product. And that's where they come up with these ideas. That's why they're so excited to talk to customers. So I think that's really important. And then I'll add something unique, which I think is, most of business is about relationships, right? So I think the most important thing for me early on was building those relationships, building upon the relationships that we had already kind of created as a marketing org with additional teams, I think was really important to success.
Yeah, great. Katie, your last thought?
Yeah, I definitely also agree. Curiosity is super important, asking those questions. I would also add that I truly believe that product marketing is uniquely positioned to offer unique value to the business. We have so much understanding and connections with different parts of the business, from operations and pricing and marketing and sales. And a lot of people may not have that same kind of knowledge because they aren't being exposed to all those different areas. And so when you have ideas or thoughts, bring it to the executive team, because the other people around you might not have that same sort of ability to do that. And so just take the leap and do it.
I think that's a really good point. And I think it's a great one to close on, which I'll go back to my mention of the octopus, right? We can be that center that we can funnel the rest of, ideas from the rest of the organization up and down. And I think we need to be that vocal sort of center point to everybody else. I think that's a really great way to close out. So thank you, ladies. This has been a really enlightening conversation on how to build product marketing from the ground up. And I hope you all in the audience enjoy the rest of the event. And thanks everyone for your participation.
Thanks, Jackie.
Take care all.
Thank you.
All right.